Good to go?
Yep.
All right, we're going to have a public hearing tonight before the regular scheduled Plan Commission meeting. I'm going to open the public hearing here at 6:31 p.m. Jane, can you start us off with a roll call, please?
Joe Osterman.
Here.
Becky Plotecker.
Here.
Ed Nelson.
Here.
Mark Meyer.
Here.
Jane Stadler. Here. Brian Oliphant.
Here.
Chad Szymanski.
Here.
Dan Lindstrom.
Here.
Dan Green.
Here.
Sandy Sheriff.
Here.
And Kevin Clark.
Here.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Notice was given that a joint public hearing is going to be held tonight by the Town of Lisbon Plan Commission and a staff representative from Waukesha County 9 to consider the conditional use request, CU 29, of Luca and Gina Martino at North 71 West 23516 Homestead Road, Sussex, Wisconsin 53089 for land altering activities in conjunction with the construction of a new single-family residence and driveway and associated retaining walls. The property is located as follows: Lot 7 of Water's Edge, located in the northeast one quarter of Section 9, Town 8 North, Range 19 East of the Town of Lisbon. More specifically, the property located at North 87 West 25060 Bay Court, Lisbon, Wisconsin 53089, tax key LSBT 0177.007. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this public hearing tonight? Anybody for this public hearing? Do you wish to speak on the public hearing tonight, sir?
Not speak, no.
Okay.
Do you want me to wait with anything that I have to say, Joe?
It's up to you if you want to do it now or later.
Basically, I think you know, we had scheduled the hearing in July. We had to cancel it because the petitioner had altered the plans to the point where we felt it was probably better to have them cancel that hearing and then get the new plans in, and then we'd reschedule for August. So that's basically what has been done here. I know we all have the plan in your packet, hopefully. We think it's a better plan. The initial plan actually had the house split. The driveway was more serpentine. I think a lot more grading. Severe grading, let's put it that way, I think was going on. They still had two retaining walls, but they were different locations. Closer, one of them was closer to the lot line. So I think overall this is just a better plan that worked out not only for the property owner, but also any neighbor concerns that there might have been. I received, I think, 3 or 4 phone calls when we had scheduled the first hearing. I didn't receive any this time. I think one guy just might have asked why was it canceled, and I told him, and he said, okay, fine. That was it. So I think after seeing this plan, the neighbors might have felt a little bit better about it as well. I'm just guessing because I haven't heard, but seeing as nobody's here, I think that may be the case. So hopefully this will work out better for everybody involved. As far as comments though, in reviewing it, we did notice that, and I'm hoping that we have the right house plans as well, because they submitted new house plans. But I'm not seeing on the front of the home on, that'd be the east and west ends of the south side, the exposures that they're talking about. It just doesn't seem like there's enough grade change there to reflect those exposures. So I think if they haven't, when we're working on the grading plan and when we're working on the house plan, if they haven't gone over those finer details, we need to get those reflected on the grading plan, and maybe they want to speak to that, I don't know. But we thought it just didn't kind of look right on the grading plan the same way that what's reflected on the elevations of the house plans. So that was one thing that we wanted to bring up. We also will need a full set of house plans when it gets to the point of issuing a permit for the house. For example, we didn't have a second story to look at, and I know they were in a hurry getting this new information to us to make the deadline for the hearing, but we kind of need all that information when we're those were a couple things with the house plans, that we noticed. And again, if they wanna address these things when I'm done, that's fine. Other than that, the retaining walls, you guys will be addressing later in your meeting. The County Park and Planning Commission will also have to address, the lower retaining wall down by the road, because that's less than 5 feet from the lot line. It appears that the upper retaining wall up by the house is greater than 5 feet from the lot line, so that won't require special approval. But in any event, will require a permit. All retaining walls require permits from our office anyway. A couple other things, as long as I was talking about being down by the road there, there's a utility easement, that's shown on the plat and is also shown on this grading plan. And there's grading as well as the retaining wall shown to be going into that utility easement. I think there's a note on the plat, the recorded subdivision plat, that talks about staying out of the utility easement unless you receive consent from the folks that have items within the utility easement, unless you receive consent from them to actually grade or put structures in the utility easement. So I think that's a condition that we are going to have on our conditional use permit to ensure that everything is okay down there. In the utility easement, just trying to run through some of these, not take your time up with things that don't need to be mentioned. Other than that, I understood that the town engineer was okay with the driveway grade. Does anybody know about that? Does anybody know about the driveway grade for the town? I think we had talked about that.
Yeah, Mitch
10%.
and I had talked about that, and the grade is 10% from the road to the lot line.
Okay.
And then from there, we don't have anything in our ordinance that specifies that you can't have
Okay.
a steeper grade.
Okay, so from the road to the lot line is the only part that you're concerned with?
Correct.
All right. There's a 6-inch asphalt curb, that runs down, it appears to run down the entire length of the west side of the driveway. I was wondering if that's something that was to be installed, or if it was just gonna be up at the part where the driveway, meets the house there, where the asphalt, or where the proposed parking pad would be, or if it's gonna run all the way down, and if that had something to do with how you're gonna direct drainage. I guess I'd like, someone to comment on that a little bit, when I'm done here. The Environmental Health Division did issue a sanitary permit for the site, for a mound system. As you can see, that's up top here in the northwest corner. They should be careful not to encroach with any, grading or equipment and disturb the mound site. Usually what we'll require is, some kind of fencing to protect the mound site so that it's not disturbed with the grading. So they should be aware of that. Stormwater, LRD, as far as I know, is reviewing the new plan, for stormwater. I haven't heard back from them, however. The grading plan also doesn't show the drain to daylight. They talk about the drain to daylight in a narrative form on the plan, but I don't see where it's shown on the plan itself. We'd kinda like to know where that's gonna be. Other than that, I don't think I have any other substantive comments. So I don't know if that generates any more questions or not, or if they wanna make some comments.
All right, yes.
Hi, Mark Mickelson with SEH. We our firm did the grading plan. Our firm did the grading plan here, and I just wanted to answer Sandy's comment regarding the curb. Yes, they wanted to propose the curb the entire length of that driveway to keep hard surface flows from impacting the neighbor to the west. So intended on having that go all the way to the curb in the roadway.
Okay. thought. One other thing, don't walk away. I did notice, as long as you're up there, the retaining wall up at the top, didn't show any top and bottom elevations like the one down by the road did. Can those be provided as well?
The copy I have does have elevations on. You're talking about the one just west of the driveway pad in front of the
Right, where
garage?
driveway pad is?
Yeah, that has been added with the plan that I have seen here.
Can you just give those to me then, for the top end and the bottom end?
I'll just bring the plan over. You can draw
Okay.
it.
All right.
So we got top, bottom, and bottom with this one.
Thank you.
I can hardly read this. So,
All right.
I don't know. Where is
Does anyone else have anything to say for the plan during the public hearing? We'll be addressing some of this again when the item comes up here shortly. Anyone else for the public hearing? We'll close the public hearing then at 6:42. And we'll open the Plan Commission meeting. We'll move item 4 up. Any comments from any citizens on any item on the agenda tonight? No. All right. Then we go to back to item 3 was discussion and necessary action to make a recommendation to Waukesha County regarding the conditional use request for land altering activities in conjunction with the construction of a new single-family home for Luca and Gina Martino at North 71 West 23516 Homestead Road, tax key LSBT 0177.007. The applicants are they here?
I'm the contractor.
Your contractor? Okay,
Yeah, the applicants are away on business.
okay.
I did talk to him earlier. He's in Chicago. His wife's in California. So they had their dates mixed up.
Okay. Dan, you want to?
So, just want to make sure that we are also kind of a little bit clear on some of the requirements between the county and between the town, because there's going to be some kind of important differences here. The county's looking for it's on.
It's on?
It's
Really?
on. I got it this time.
You got it. Good man.
The county's looking for the recommendation and to hear from the public at this time and for you to ask any questions as well. But the specific things that we're going to be looking at are going to be, as Sandy had mentioned before, is going to strictly be the kind of retaining wall. So I anticipate we'll probably be hearing some of those comments if once we get to the a little bit more detail if we want to ask those comments or if we want to have a dialogue back and
I'm going to move that item up right after this one too, so. All right.
So I just want to make sure that that's clear. I think Sandy actually addressed, I had a handful of comments outside of, I guess you would say, what we typically be reviewing, but she asked those questions as well, so.
Okay.
Is there a timetable for the grading? Are they planning on doing it, like, as soon as possible, or are they gonna stage it this fall, complete next spring? Do you have an idea?
They want to.
Can you come up? We're actually
Oh,
on
yeah,
TV
no
here
problem.
tonight, so otherwise nobody's going to hear you.
My
If you-
name's Jim Worthington. I'm with 12 Gauge Construction. Right now, the plan did get flipped. We do have complete plans, and so the homeowners like it. There was a lot of things that when the garage was on the right side, it just really wasn't working. One, cost, and two, the extent of the grading. We were looking at hauling off probably close to 80 dump trucks of dirt. So now, with being on the left side, it appears that we're going to be able to have a balanced site. The homeowner is going to have about 6 steps from his garage to his home. They understand that, they get that. They've also want to put in heat in the driveway. So they know their driveway is going to be steeper than normal, but the whole driveway is going to be heated. So there's a lot of things that we've been talking about going through the budget. But I think it's a good plan. They're ready to build. Their financing is approved. They do have their construction loan. So it's just a matter of finishing up the permits and get going.
So would they wanna finish then all the grading this fall and begin construction?
Yes, ma'am.
That's-
Yes, ma'am. They're anxious to get going. They have an offer on their current home, and so they want to get moving.
So you guys you don't have a full set of plans here, I'm assuming, but somebody can get to.
I don't. I was told by my office that they submitted a revised full set. I actually called our secretary in the office on the way here. So apparently that's somewhere in somebody's office, but I can go ahead and get you another one tomorrow. That's not a problem.
Yeah, we're missing, like, there's no basement, cross section, there's no second story.
Not a problem. I can get a full set issued to you.
Yeah,
So
all right.
Okay. And then as far as the grade, not enough grade change, that's something you want to address tonight, or is just they need to get back to you on that?
Yeah, they'll just need to get back to us on the finer details of things, either that or we make it a condition of approval if that's the way this goes.
Okay, and the drain to daylight, is that anything?
We'll be able to add that, we'll be able to provide that. So that's just making sure, there's plenty of grade change on this property, so the basement will certainly be able to have that drain to daylight. We'll just want you to show exactly on the plan where it will be.
And then the retaining wall, we'll address that when we get to that item. All right, any comments from the board? Ed?
I'm assuming it's the interlocking concrete block
For the retaining wall?
for the retaining.
We're going to have an
wall.
actual item agenda. and I-
Okay, so,
Yeah,
okay.
we're going to get
Strike
to that next.
one,
It's at the end of your check.
okay.
Nothing on this one?
No.
Okay. Mark? Jane?
No.
Becky?
No.
Nothing for Brian? All right, so the county would be asking if we're going to approve this contingent upon all of the, everything,
Finer
we've-
details.
the finer details. Anything else from staff? Kevin, Dan? No?
I have a question. So what's my next step? As far as the contractor, how the things are going through this process? Because I've never worked here in Lisbon before.
And we can get back to you
Okay.
on that portion.
Yeah, you can either contact me, or very simply, the town makes a recommendation to the county, then it goes to the county park and planning commission,
Okay.
and they make a final decision, and then, once you comply with any conditions, we issue you a permit.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'll make a motion that we approve the conditional use request for land altering activities in conjunction with the construction of a new single-family home for Luca and Gina Martino at North 71 West 23516 Homestead Road, tax key LSBT 0177.007, with all the conditions that were set forth by Waukesha County and the town of Lisbon tonight. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Ed. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then I'm going to move up item F, which is discussion necessary action on the request for Luca and Gina Martino for the property located at North 71 West 23516 Homestead Road in the town of Lisbon, tax LSBT 0177.007, to authorize the construction of the proposed retaining walls pursuant to section 3 parent C, parent 5, parent C of the town zoning code. You want to start off, Dan, or you have comments on this too, Sandy, right? Or was that all addressed in the public
Yeah,
hearing?
I basically said mine already.
Okay.
Go ahead. Okay.
So from the town's specific perspective of where it kind of comes directly to our ordinance, it's going to be in that code section that was referenced, and it's where the construction of the retaining walls shall be a minimum of 5 feet from the property line to allow kind of the maintenance of it. And as you can tell in the bottom right-hand corner of the property, or the southeast corner of the property, you're looking at coming close to that area. Plan Commission may specify if that can be that close. It's up to the discretion of that body at such time. Also, any retaining walls in excess of 3 feet in height from the existing grade shall be approved by the town Plan Commission. And to understand at that point, then you're going to be taking a look at any additional materials if you so choose. Anything over 4 feet also must be constructed and designed by a certified structural engineer to be able to handle that retaining wall. So from the standpoint of where it deviates from our code is going to be those specific pieces. Again, its proximity to that lot line is going to be a main issue. That any of those heights that are going to be above that 5 feet above the, or it says 3 feet from the existing grade. I mean, so that's where our main concerns are. It's what your discussion is going to be about tonight. We don't have a recommendation one way or the other because it is a discretion item from the Plan Commission.
Okay. So what we have right off the bat is how close it is to the lot line. Who's dealing with the retention wall? Are you dealing with the retention wall, or?
We have landscape bids for it, but haven't been awarded.
Okay. So we have questions on this because it's getting too close to the lot line is number one. So whoever's gonna be dealing with that, it can't get that close. And then anything above 3 feet above grade, it's gonna, you said it's gonna require plans, Dan?
Anything above 4 feet above grade should be
4
on
feet.
plans, but anything above 3 feet, you're allowed to have discussion. Now, within 5 feet, you can have the discretion to waive that if you so choose because of stipulations in the area, specific design requirements. In this case, we have some major grade changes, so if you're comfortable with it without it crossing into the property line, you have that discretion for it to go.
How's the plan commission feel on letting it get closer than 5 feet to the lot line? Brian?
Pardon me? I'm sorry.
As far as letting the retention wall get closer than 5 feet to the lot line, do you have a feeling in that one way or the other?
I think 5 feet would be the closest I would feel comfortable.
Becky?
I don't really care one way or the other. I don't see a problem with it, but
Jane?
Well, it's awfully close, and if this is the house next door that's right in the view of the neighbor, I would like to see it over a little bit further.
Okay, so you'd like to retain the 5 foot minimum?
Yes.
Mark?
How close are they?
It looks like
Oh,
it's
they're
almost
right
right
on
to it, yeah.
Well, I don't know, 3 or 4 feet anyway would be, I mean, just so they got room to mow the lawn, do whatever. They can't do anything on that wall without going to their neighbor's
No.
property otherwise.
Right.
So I guess I'm more in favor of the 5 foot unless they
5
come
foot.
up with some other number that they're gonna adhere to where it can maintain the lawn and stuff.
Okay.
I'd like to maintain the 5 foot as well for the purpose of maintenance on it, cutting the lower side, first of all. Otherwise, you can't possibly cut your own grass without going on the neighbor's. Second of all, if something does happen to that wall in the future, you're gonna need the neighbor's permission, I believe to the west, to work on the wall. So I'd like to see 5 foot minimum.
Ed?
Given what Chad just said, yeah, I was thinking that, I'm assuming behind the wall, possibly the homeowner's considering ground cover of some sort, not grass. Yeah. So there's no, I mean, the distance, it becomes minimal, and it's obviously, this is all a steep grade, hence the need for the retaining wall. I would like to see it off the lot line, even though I assume, because no one is here saying otherwise, the neighbor is not objecting to this.
There is
So,
a neighbor here.
okay. Not objecting?
That's the first time I saw the plan.
Okay. Well,
I have a copy of the old plan, so.
okay. Yes.
And I'm not the neighbor, I believe you're talking of the retaining wall that's down to the right.
Yeah, this is the one that's closest to the court.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the one we're discussing. The one that's closer up to the garage.
I'm not that neighbor, I'm the neighbor.
You're not that neighbor.
On the
Okay.
other side.
And you already have a wall, I see.
Yes, yeah, you see that wall.
I see that, yes.
Yeah.
Because honestly, sir, I didn't even know if this was a new home or an existing home. Now we're getting better. So I would say yeah, I would like to see that wall feasible, stay off that lot line,
You're in favor of the 5 foot?
5 foot.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so it's a general consensus to stay 5 foot.
but is that gonna put it on the driveway?
They'll have to move the driveway.
They'll have to move the driveway.
then.
Will that exceed our major grading requirements for any steep grades?
I can't hear you, Dan.
I said that just may change some of the steep grades that they're already gonna potentially have there, so just be mindful of that one. It was a little bit hard to tell, but I was looking for the elevation changes on that southern wall, the total height difference, and mine was a little blurry in my copy, so if the applicant can, or the representative can talk about the total height of that bottom wall, that'd be great.
Did you hear what he said?
I heard what he said. We don't have the elevations for the wall. We will get elevations for the wall and landscape and all that kind of stuff. What we were trying to do was just come to this meeting and see what the next steps are.
It wasn't elevation plans, it was just the elevation heights that I was looking for. And it looked like it was on the plan top and bottom, but it was blurry in my copies.
Oh, that is on the plan.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can say that, yeah, no problem. We have all that.
I don't think there'll be any problem adjusting it to that 5-foot requirement from the lot line. We'll be able to ship things, it's just enough to do that.
Okay. What about the utility easement?
I don't think there's any way that this driveway can go in without doing some grading in that area. We're just gonna have to coordinate with those utilities. There might need to be some utility adjustments that are made there, and we'll just have to work with them.
The county's okay with that, as long as they get permission?
It's more of a matter of contacting those utility companies, because it says they must give their consent.
But if they get consent, then the county shouldn't have an issue with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's not a problem. We have to contact utilities on every job site. Not a problem.
Okay. So we're gonna be 5 feet off, and then the heights, we don't know what those are yet.
We've given some heights generally on the plan. If we need more, we can certainly add those.
I have those
Do you have them?
for the lower one. The end closest to the home is, top is 1039, bottom is 1038. And part closest to the road, top is 1038, bottom is 1034.
That's what I thought. So in that case, the top, it looked like it was below the 3 feet line, but the bottom looked like it was above. And so you guys could condition, if you don't want to have them come back for any aesthetics, you could simply state that it must match the look and feel of the home and must be compatible with the home design. Or you could have them come back for aesthetics, but if you don't want to have them do that, you don't have to.
Well, how does the board feel? Do you want them to come back to the Plan Commission on the aesthetic end of it, or who do we leave it up to then? Just the staff?
Building inspector can, I would say that.
You know, assuming the cost of building this home, said party is not going to put in a ratty wall. They're going to put in a nice wall. That's where I was going with the, is it interconnected, concrete block, which I possibly assume it will be.
It's either gonna be that or like a nice nylon stone. I mean, the homeowners are going to the expense of heating their driveway.
Yes.
They're not gonna have.
Yeah, that was a definite clue.
They're not gonna have an ugly landscape job.
No,
So-
no. And given that distance is, I don't know how deep you have to go, with your footings. Will the wall be sitting on poured footings at this point?
I believe that if the wall actually is over 5 feet, it has to be an engineered wall.
Yep.
Okay.
And so the answer to your question is, if it's over 5 feet, yes, it's gonna be on footing, then yes, it'll be engineered.
Okay. And will it be at a slant, sir, somewhat of a slant? At an angle, do you know?
Whatever the architects and engineers come up with, yes, we will.
Okay, all right.
You're fine. Jane?
No, I think that's
I'm
covered.
good with Brian checking
Brian.
compatible
Brian
with the
checking
house.
out.
Brian, check it.
All right, you're on the spot, Brian.
They also have an HOA there too. That's pretty
Right.
strict, so I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about the aesthetics between the HOA and myself.
And the HOA, just so you know, we've got their letter, and Luca Martino, the owner, he went through this step with them, and they approved the plan and everything that Luca did.
Somebody else.
Okay.
Brian, excuse me, but what is HOA?
Oh, homeowners association.
Okay. Comes out with all these short things and sometimes they get confusing. Right? No.
That's not a bad thing.
Not necessarily a bad thing. It depends.
Any other comments from staff? Anything else we need to address on this? So we're comfortable if they meet all these conditions then? Waukesha County's good, we're good. Any other questions from the board?
No.
Someone want to make a motion on this item?
I will.
Okay.
I would move that the request for or from Usa and Gina Martino for the property located at North 71 West 23516 Homestead Road in the town of Lisbon with an LSBT of 0177.007 to authorize the construction of a proposed retaining walls pursuant to section 3C and 5C of the town zoning code be approved. also per Waukesha County recommendations, planning recommendations, and said town planner, Town of Lisbon.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Chad. That cover everything we're looking at? All right. Any other discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
And likewise, this will be on the county property line, which at the same time needs to do this. So they'll both be handled at the same.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, Sandy. Come around anytime.
Item 5 is discussion and necessary action on the July 11th, 2019 Plan Commission public hearing and meeting minutes. We have the minutes. Any comments, questions, or is there a motion on the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the July 11th Planning Commission meeting minutes.
Moved by Chad to approve. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Second by Ed. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Want to
Oh, you abstaining. Motion carries 6-0 with Mark Meyer abstaining. All right, item 6 is new business. A, discussion and necessary action on the request for Louis Finco for the properties located at North 50 West 25545 Lisbon Road, tax key LSBT 0275.997.003 and 0275.997.005 for a two-lot combination certified survey map and recommendation of the town board of the same. Applicant here. You can actually have a seat if you want. Sandy was just using it, so.
More comfortable.
No, it's less exposure.
There you go. How you doing?
Good, how are you guys?
Doing good, thanks.
They're okay so far.
We'll start off with Dan.
Mr. Chair.
I'll stick this on here. Before you tonight is a combination CSM request for the property. I would say that's probably almost equidistant between City of Pewaukee and the Village of Sussex in the southern portion of the community. It does lie within the Sussex extraterritorial jurisdiction areas, and so everything we talk about tonight will also have a kind of nugget that it still has to go through that joint planning commission review at that same time. So I have on the screen in front of you the location map. Important things to note about this one: it is I guess you would call it an island in the situation that it does not have any road frontage. So any action, if it is approved tonight, should also be conditioned on the fact that you potentially could be granting a combination CSM for parcels that do already exist but do not have road frontage. And so the parcels do exist. It was a CSM at one time. The Waukesha County provided comments back in 2010 because it was first originally talked about at that time. The applicant didn't complete that process at that time, but now is looking to sell the property, and as one of those conditions of the sale, it's the lot combinations to those. So on the screen in front of you, you can see the two lots that we're talking about here tonight, County K to the front.
Dim those lights. Is it possible to dim some of those lights down?
Was there in?
Yeah. Yes, please. There, okay.
You just have to crack the curtains a little bit to give you guys some light if necessary. So you can see the two parcels on there. The area in colored gray is going to be, that's the Village of Sussex, and so that's where we are in relation to Sussex at this time. Pewaukee's just off the bottom here. All right. So I also have on the screen two items in front of you, one of which is the proposed CSM, and also the other one then is just an exhibit map from what would be a condition of approval at this time, which would be a joint access maintenance agreement. Right now, there is a easement that is recorded on the existing CSM 9791 that was recorded at the time. The concern back in 2010 was the maintenance agreement for that easement. That easement also, or that CSM also does reference the fact that there is a future road reservation, 66-foot wide road reservation in that area as well, and so that is also included. This easement for that area is over top of that road reservation. With that being said, we do have some standard conditions of approval, but I did want to include some Waukesha County comments. Sandy's not here anymore. But as a result of discussions here, the established road right-of-way on County K is 100 feet. The CSM shows 130 feet, so County DPW will have to sign off on this review as well. So our condition would be for them to be consulted, and if they so choose to have approval authority on it, to have them sign off on that CSM. Making sure that the setbacks are correct. At this point, we don't have a road setback that I would like to see on there. Right now, the CSM only shows 50 or 30. There is no road setback for 50 feet unless the town wants to see that 50-foot setback. So, but again, that's in that area, not actually on the area that we're talking about here. So those are Waukesha County's comments. They did have a couple little nuggets to also talk about, which is what I put on the screen now. Which is the lot, if we are looking to approve it tonight, would have to have that waiver from the town to not have that road frontage. So if you do make a motion, I would like to see that included as a specific item. One of the other conditions that has been brought up by ourself as well as Waukesha County is, again, as I mentioned, is that maintenance agreement. The town attorney has been reviewing that for their review. It's not typically something that we would review and directly come from us, and so that's the reason why we are providing the guidance to that document, because it is a private party document at that time. Our town planner comments are going to be basic items from a CSM standpoint, is just complying with the state requirements for sizing, our requirements for scaling. A lot of them are typically going to be more surface level items that I think the town planner can just review as conditions of approval to make sure that those are addressed, including making sure that there are any additional access easements separate on a detailed page so that we can kind of clearly illustrate that area. If you look at the plat, it's a little, or on the CSM, it's a little bit hard to read that area, so we'd like to have a call out for that piece. And if there are going to be any proposed utility easements in addition to what's there, we'd like to see that. Approval by Waukesha County Public Works Department, approval conditioned on the Village of Sussex, and again, that driveway easement for proposed Lot 1 and proposed Lot 3. Again, that is a private matter as a result of that one, but we would like that maintenance agreement as a condition of approval. So, with that, like as I mentioned, a lot of my comments are going to be more technical comments on the CSM, and so I don't think there's any large glaring items. I know Kathy has reviewed it and provided some comments, and I did incorporate some of those comments into here. I don't know if Kevin has any additional comments. I think you do from some other small items of the maintenance agreement.
I don't have any other comments. This is my first opportunity to review. I would just suggest that the Plan Commission make the approval subject to town attorney approval. So that would be my only other additional suggestion.
Okay. Comments or questions from the board? Ed, anything?
Mr. Finko, I assume. Yes. Interesting. What? I'm just curious, sir. I'm sorry. I see a pool. I see a baseball field. I see you had a baseball shirt on. Obviously, a baseball fanatic. Why do you want to do this?
Why do I want to do 2 in 1?
Yes. I mean, besides all the the material.
I can address that one. It was a condition of their sale.
Yes and no. I mean,
it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
It's one of them is condition of a sale and as part of our maintenance agreement, and a couple other loose, low-hanging, or I should say untied strings almost, and so we're kind of working our way through that process.
Okay, and this property is not going to be sold, or there's not going to be another home built on it or anything to that?
No, the property will be sold.
It will be.
It will be sold to another single family.
Okay.
To a family. Yeah.
Are they planning to build a home on that?
No, they can't build on it.
Okay, I understood.
I'm just looking to clean things up, basically.
Yeah, what
Yes.
happened when
Title-wise.
we originally came to the board was the house in front of us had to sign off on the maintenance agreement.
Right.
But a bank owned it, and so it got tabled for 2 years, and then that was 8 years ago.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I actually remember that, because, that was another,
So you own both, you're combining them,
yeah.
That's it.
just for title purpose and so on and so
Single
forth.
tax.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. Okay.
Tidying things up, okay.
Yeah, and I
Now it makes
talked to
sense.
each of the neighbors, they're all in agreement. I mean, everybody's.
Well, it
rights
makes
are-
sense.
I mean, it's just a standard
Yeah.
document, I guess.
Mhm.
At least the maintenance agreement is.
Yep. The other one comment that I would have is obviously a private party sale is on its own timeline compared to what our potential timeline would be. So the other condition that I would probably suggest at this time is going to be that it would just be conditioned that whoever the owner is at such time is the appropriate name on the CSM. So right now it's obviously Mr. Finko, but if that happens to transition before the CSM can be recorded, I want them to be able to allow to change that name, resubmit it to us, and not have to come all the way
Come
back
all
here.
the way, yeah.
We did have the buyer also submit the application, so they are, as part of that agreement, aware of that, of this process as well. So I would also suggest that as a condition at that time.
So you have a buyer already?
Yes.
Might as well just pursue with recording with the new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the reason why we had both both parties
Right.
submit an application, is so that it was,
Okay.
it could be conditioned on
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Anything for you, Chad? You got it. Good?
Good.
No,
Good. Jane?
Chad's on it.
no other comments.
Becky?
No, nothing.
Nope, I'm good.
All right. And everybody's, I mean, as far as the road frontage, that's for a easement for a road,
Yeah.
that 66-foot road that may never exist or won't probably exist.
You have a road reservation already in the
It's
CSM.
in.
It does have an access easement over that same spot, so we have an easement and a
Yeah.
road reservation. The easement is for the property, the road reservation would be for a future road.
Right.
So the property does have access via easement to the area, but it does not have road frontage at this time.
And that all remain the same.
But that's what we're talking about, the road setback from, is from that potential road that probably will never exist. Okay, everybody's okay with that?
Well, I think
At
at the
30?
time, correct me if I'm wrong, I think at the time when you had more than 2 lots, I think you had to have a driveway easement, because that could be a dedicated road if
Yeah.
there was
Yeah.
2 or more families. So that's why, that's the origin of this. Well, now he's omitting one of the lots, so the road probably will never
Right.
show up.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be an issue really, but it's something we need to address. So everybody's okay with that at this point? I'm seeing heads
Yes.
shaking. Okay. No road frontage, everybody's good with that?
Yes.
All right. And then everything else is pretty much just the conditions. Anything else you want to add?
So to speak.
No? So if we do this contingent upon all the requirements tonight, if staff is good? All right. Any final comments from the board? Well, we get one more chance for comments after we make a motion, I guess. Does anyone wish to make a motion on this?
Make a motion to approve the request for Louis Finco for the properties located at N50W25545 Lisbon Road, LSP 0275.997.003 and 0275.997.005 for a 2-lot combination certified survey map with the recommendation of town board of the same.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, would you also add all the contingencies listed tonight and approval of the town attorney?
Yes.
Yes.
Do we have
Seconds
to-
okay?
And the town attorney and the town planner.
Yeah, what about does Village of Sussex have to
And then-
okay this?
That's part of my comment.
That was part of
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan's
That was in
comments.
your comments, correct? Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have any indication from them that they're going to cause us problems on this?
No, I've talked to them.
How unusual.
Sure.
Keep your fingers crossed.
We can't even
We've
see.
been on this road because of the 10 years ago.
We can't, just so you know, we were having a hard time getting JPC meetings with them. They are just, happen to not have time to have JPC meetings for some
Yeah,
reason.
I've been assured that this won't be held up there at all.
We've been denied one date, so we'll see if we can keep swinging and get something in place, so.
Just so you know,
Yes.
we were having a
I know,
heck of a
and-
time getting
and
meetings.
that's why the recording of the new owner is so important.
Right.
That,
Right.
you know, if this process could take a while.
Right,
Mhm.
okay.
And that's why, but I'm always confident.
And we're sorry that it's happening that way. It's rather childish, but there's
No,
nothing we
no,
can do about
that's
it.
fine.
So, okay. Any other comments?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with everything.
Yes. You still got to use the pool?
It's over anytime. You call first.
Okay.
Item B, discussion and necessary action on the request for Air Maintenance Inc., property owner, Stewart Properties LLC for the property located at West 230 North 4933 Betker Drive, tax fee LSBT 0284.995.009 for a site plan and plan of operation amendment to build a 40-foot by 100-foot addition to the existing building. Applicants here, come on up.
Mr. Chair. Before you is a site plan of operation amendment for building expansion, as you mentioned, for a 40 by 100 foot addition. I have the map up in front of you. It's going to be in our Commerce Center area. Important points to note about this one is it's been I would guess you would call it a legacy business. It's been there for quite a few years, and now they're looking to expand and provide additional storage and I'd say truck space, I guess you would say, or storage space for vehicles at that time. In front of you is also a zoning map, just to let you know that they are in compliance. But as a result of it being such a legacy business, the operation plan couldn't seem to find one in our file, so at that time, so that's the reason why we're coming forward with that site plan of operation as well as the actual site plan. A little bit of information on this one. The applicant did provide some hours of operation, and knowing the fact of what the business is, I did have one concern about their application, which is they were limited from Sunday to Thursday, 24 hours. Because of their operation potential, I would probably suggest moving that to a 7 days a week, 24-hour possibility in case there's ever an emergency. Just knowing what the operation of that business could be, I'm sure that there potentially could be a Friday or Saturday operation in that facility. So I would just expand it to be more than just what was shown here. That would be my recommendation on the hours of operation.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you want to knock that out right away?
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, so you have on your site plan, part of your plan of operation here, that you only operate from Sunday to Thursday, 24 hours a day. That means you cannot even be in that building on Friday or Saturday.
Oh, yeah, we don't want that.
Didn't think so.
So you prefer to go 24/7?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right.
And being that it's in that business center, it's typical for that type of
Right.
operation.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that, from an operation standpoint, was about the only concern that I had from that nature. From the site plan situation, I did put some elevations in the packet. There are on the screen in front of you here is continuing the elevations and the style of building and what's there now. The concern of the site plan that I had, as you saw in my staff report, was for parking. Right now, the business operation, you can see my mouse up on the screen here, expansion is actually over what is currently the proposed parking lot. And then what they had on here was a future asphalt. My concern is the town code requires that any parking or any paved parking lots for over 4 stalls are required to be hard surfaced. And so while we have loading and bay doors to the north of the building, we wouldn't have access via hard surface to that point. And so there should be a revised plan or a condition of approval that there would be at least an access drive, if not more, of a replacement of parking at that same time, and not as a future item. It will need hard surface to get to that north side. So that is about the only other concern I had from that standpoint. We didn't have, because of the location, because it was in the back, we didn't look at any changes to the landscaping requirements because it is the front of the building, and there isn't any additional pieces because it is not in a special district area there. So we went through that review. So with that, I have a couple little, I have the examples on there, and then from that standpoint, we just have our typical recommendations, which is all site plan of operation shall be submitted and complied with. Site plan shall be on file with the town of Lisbon, which we will have after this time if it is approved. The town retains the right to annually review the operation for compliance, and you so choose to do that. The fire chief shall inspect the premises following completion, and the site is in compliance with respect to any fire codes, and any issues should be addressed at that time. Same thing for the building inspector. Approval by Waukesha County Health Health Division for any issues that would be on there. Hours of operations to be, as I put on here, to be discussed by the applicant with Plan Commission, so I would actually include that at such time. No additional outdoor storage of materials. I don't think they're doing that at this time. I didn't see that in my operation or in my review of it. Any future additional business signage shall require separate signage, and so if they do at that time have to be coming for sign approval, and there wasn't one proposed at this time. Approval shall be granted to these conditions stated herein, and any alterations shall come back before this body. And then the town reserves the right to review any of those specific conditions as put forth. If it becomes a problem, and there hasn't been one, it wasn't an issue, but those are our standard conditions of approval. So at that point, those outside of those 2 changes, that was my only 2 main comments to the site plan of operation.
Okay, comments from the board?
Are there any difficulties in terms of the access as has been described by our town planner, in terms of, is it feasible for the parking?
Oh, yeah, no problem.
It is not a problem, okay. Then
No.
obviously, the hours of operation were already addressed, so
Yeah.
no further comments.
Chad, anything?
I'm assuming this addition's gonna match the existing.
Yes, sir.
Okay. My other question was the hard surface already. If that was gonna be a problem, that was answered, so I'm good.
You didn't ask about the color, though.
I don't care.
Okay.
It's gotta match the other one.
It's got to. It's got. Well, I don't know what the other color is.
Flowing through.
White.
Mark?
Nothing additional.
Jane?
Nothing additional, no.
Becky?
Nothing else.
Brian?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Anything else you want to add?
Oh, thank you.
All right. So, does anyone wish to make a motion on this item?
I will. I would move that the action on the request for Air Maintenance, Inc., property owner Stewart Properties LLC, for the property located at West 230 North 4933 Bedker Drive with an LSBT 0284.995.009 for a site plan/plan of operation amendment to build a 40 by 100 addition to the existing building, be approved per town planner recommendations and comments.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Chad. Anything else from staff that meets what you're looking for? All right.
Any?
He does that. If he doesn't, Ed does sometimes.
Yeah, that usually doesn't happen to an attorney, Kevin.
Any final comments from the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.
Good night.
Item C, discussion necessary action on the request for Tomert Bruss for the property located at North 87 West 23217 North Lisbon Road, tax T LSBT 0185.998.002, to construct a 40-foot by 104-foot accessory building non-conforming to the town zoning code and guidelines provided in Chapter 11, Section 3, Parent 5, Parent H. Description to be provided at the meeting. Applicant here. All right, sir, do you want to come on up? How you doing tonight?
How you doing?
Good, thank you. All right, Dan, you want to start us off?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually going to default to Brian here on this one to start with because it was a request that had come from Brian in terms of the actual code language. So I will default to Brian and provide any additional comments after that.
Okay. Can everybody see all right with the light? Probably the only planning commission in the state that does it in the dark. All right.
As long as you can still see them.
Yeah.
On YouTube or whatever.
All right.
So, basically, the way our code reads is that, based on the amount of land he has, the size of his shed is appropriate. He can have a 4,000 square foot detached garage, but you can't have it in front of the house, and he wants to put it in front of the house. And the way our code reads is if you're closer to the road, you cannot be any closer to the road than the front setback line of the house, and then you're limited to 1,200. If you don't bring it any closer to the rear setback line of the house, then he's allowed actually larger than what he's proposing. But his is going to be built in the front of the home, and it's kind of a weird situation because the road has another lot in front of it, similar to Mr. Finko's. And I just felt with the size of the building being in front of the house, he does have neighbors. I wanted another set of eyes to look at it, to approve it, because we can, as Plan Commission, can approve this type of situation. It doesn't have to go to a Board of Appeals.
It is in the zoning code for that reason, and so that's the reason why Brian had requested it to come here. So, on the map in front of you, you can kind of see the air photo. Right in the area that's in the colored yellow here, that is in the town of Lisbon jurisdiction. Everything that's not colored is actually Waukesha County shoreline jurisdiction. I believe Waukesha County, at this case, because of its location, has taken they will not be participating in this process if it stays outside of that area. So while he has a large lot, he's a little bit limited in staying outside of the shoreline setback. But here you can see it. I just have some elevations there, but on the site plan, north is facing to the right on the screen. And as you can tell, here's the building, here's the turnaround, and then here's the proposed location right here. So,
Dan, may I ask, I'm sorry, could you go back to the first slide, please? That, with your cursor, where's the home and where's the proposed building?
home is
Is
here.
that, okay, yeah, because I really couldn't tell there was even a home there.
And proposed, actually, let me go back that way, you can get that color off there, right
Okay.
here. And then it would be right around here.
All right.
So there's a tree line.
There's a
shooting
tree
from
line
the-
then?
Yeah.
Okay,
There's actually 3 tree lines that are between North Lisbon and where that is located.
Yeah.
okay.
One tree line between your neighbor, and then 2 more from the,
Correct.
one here and then another.
I see you have a shared driveway, okay.
Yep, and that's on the plot of survey as well.
And if I remember right, there's a small portion of conservancy up in the front?
Yep. if
It's
you
a
look-
very small,
there's conservancy right here.
okay.
Right here. There's a little bit of what our conservancy would be if the shoreline jurisdiction wasn't there. We would
Okay.
have a darker green over here.
So your neighbor to the north would be really the only party really seeing this structure, I believe.
That's the,
There is land
Brian?
right there that is still available for a neighbor to,
See it.
it is buildable.
Okay.
but it wouldn't matter from them. I mean,
Right.
from the perspective of building there, you see it in the back.
This
or-
one, do you have a neighbor here?
Yeah, actually-
There's already a neighbor here in this
There's,
case.
yeah, there's actually, I mean, there's, if you want, I can kind of, I'm going to show you on the
Please.
So, there's, the only houses that are built are, so it affects 3 neighbors. This is the McHugh residence, which is up. This is my home, and then Tyler and Meg Boards are going to be building here in October. They have, I believe they already have their building permits. So I did approach all the neighbors, and I have the letters from everyone that says they don't care, you know, where the building's going to go here, because the way it's set, the way the building is set, when we originally came here, when Jeff Jaworski and I came 10 years ago to build this road and get approval to this, the way this property is set up, so this is the property right here, and it was always the intention to take that building and take my home and kind of put it on a side, because this is really the interesting part of the property, kind of preserve that. This right here sets down about maybe 6 to 7 feet below everything else. It's behind these tree lines. His house projects this way. This house, because I've talked to Tyler and Meg, they're going to project this way. No one really looks at this house. Everything that I look at, the house is projected to kind of look back at all the nation in here. This is the one place where it logically makes sense to put this building. No one's house faces back to it. It's behind this tree line. There's a tree line here. This is all coniferous trees. You can't see my home, or would you be able to see this from North Lisbon? So it really would only affect, you know, Jason is really the only one that would really affect. He's about 250 feet about from where the footprint of this one, and where their line is, because of these trees, they can't even really see it. So it doesn't really impact the other homes, you know, with any significance.
Okay.
We could go on a field trip. We're right here right now.
I was gonna say it's about 300 feet back here. So
Let's go.
there's beer in the fridge, so we can all go.
You wouldn't happen to have any gin and tonic? No. That's out of order.
And just for the record, I do have 3 letters that he submitted on file for neighbors that were okay with the proposed building.
And they have no issues.
They have no issues.
The only other question I would have, the material, I assume it's going to be steel
Yep.
or aluminum. Will the colors match your home, sir?
Yep.
Okay. Had to ask that.
That would have been my one condition of approval if I was to interject something with it, would just have to match not so much the materials, but at least the color of the materials.
And it
Yeah.
does.
Thank you, Dan. No
I
further.
did just put some exterior finishes on the bottom there, so podium's in the way, but you can see what's shown there. So.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Chad?
Is there an existing driveway or path or something that goes out into that area?
There isn't.
That's what it kind of looks like from the map, would you agree?
Yeah, no, I mean, originally, you know,
prior to this, being developed, before there was a house there, there's a path that goes, that kind of goes down. It's just kind of a beaten down path. We take four-wheelers and stuff.
Okay.
There's no driveway there.
Okay.
And you said that elevation's approximately 6 foot lower than the house. Do you have any concern of it flooding out down there ever, or no?
The way the property sets up, I mean, everything here flows down. This is all low, and there's another area down here, so everything flows down here. And from here, like I said, this is about 6 to 7 feet lower than the house, lower from everything here. From here, it drops another probably 5 feet down.
Okay.
So everything just continues
So
to
it
flow
would
down.
flow.
So this will be swaled around so that the water can kind of go down. But it's like I said, it's a very appropriate place because it's going to drop 6 feet lower than all the other homes and stuff. So it's as protected or as hidden of a place as you can put a building like this.
I don't know if this is appropriate, but this is just for personal storage, equipment, and
It
toys?
is, yeah. A couple of tractors, skid steer.
I don't need to know what, I
Right.
just have to verify it's.
Yeah, it's just a storage shed.
Okay,
That's okay. I was going to ask that question, but thank you.
that's all I have.
Mark?
Nothing more.
Jane?
I was gonna say, no business. And that's-
We didn't have an application for this type request, so it went on the application that likely made the most sense, which had some descriptors of the building and stuff like that, so we don't see this one too often, so there really wasn't an application to narrow us in on. That's the reason why you saw a site plan of operation application in the packet.
Becky?
No, I don't have anything.
Brian?
Nope.
So you said with a requirement with size, you had stated 4,000 earlier, but if it's behind, there's no limit?
So if you're in line with the front edge of the building, the front setback of the building, the established setback of the building, you'd be limited to 1,200. And if you're behind the rear of the building, you can be up to exceed what he's proposing.
How many acres do you have?
Okay.
10?
20.
20.
Yeah, it's just fine.
19.82
He could have a
acres
14,000
here.
square foot detached garage with the amount of acres you have. So
I can
4,000
see.
is appropriate.
Yeah,
It was just the fact that it was in front of the home.
home.
Sure.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, I don't think anybody seems to have an issue with that, correct?
No.
All right, anything else from staff?
Nothing here.
Does anyone wish to make a motion on this item?
I would move the request for Mr. Thomas Bruss for the property located at North 87, West 23217, North Lisbon Road, with an LSBT of 0185.998.002 to construct a 40 by 104 accessory building not conforming to town zoning code and guidelines provided in Chapter 11, Section 3, Prem 5, Prem H. Description to be provided at meeting, which was done, with recommendations from town planner.
Be approved?
Be approved. Sorry.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Chad. Anything else we need to add, or are we good? Any other
I want to add a quick comment. Just speaking for myself, the reason why I'm okay with this is, for one, the layout of the land. I think it makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't want to see you clear out a bunch of trees to put this somewhere else. And second of all, with the letters okaying it from the abutting properties, your neighbors, that's the reason why I'm okay with this. I just want that to be said for the future.
Yeah, matter of record. And I would, Chad, I would add that the famous phrase, location, 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 because you're not in a crowded subdivision the way this is parceled out, so hence, because obviously if you were, it would probably be a different story. So, no further comment.
Okay, any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Now you'll have something, a place to put stuff.
That's right. Which I need, so thanks again.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Good night.
Item D, discussion and necessary action on the request for Newman Developments, Inc. for the property located along Hillside Road in the town of Lisbon. Tax key LSBT 0205.995 and LSBT 0208.987. generally located on the west side of Hillside Drive adjacent to Beverly Lane for the following. Discussion and possible action on a preliminary plat for the proposed Hillside Ridge subdivision and recommendation to the town board of the same. And discussion and possible action on a combined general development plan and specific development plan for the proposed Hillside Ridge subdivision and recommendation to the town board of the same. How you doing? How you doing, Steve?
Should we turn the lights back on?
Yeah, we need, let's turn this
Hey,
one above the.
For us that don't have screens, I think we need the,
It's-
lights on.
That works.
Sunglasses.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get a screen for up there because,
The blue does not do well.
yeah, I'm not a big fan. I mean, we are literally having a meeting in the dark.
Or we could have fancy little reading lights.
We'll get a screen.
Just saying.
All right.
All right, did you go through both item A and, or item I should say?
High and, yeah, 1 and 2 there, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. The applicant is here tonight to discuss any questions that you may have, but I can go through my review letter. I did send my review comments to the applicant, and so I believe you had an opportunity to send them to the surveyor. A lot of them are just gonna be basic kind of cleanup actions of what our code requires. I don't think there's too many large hurdles, but there are some, I would say, unanswered questions. Plus, the Plan Commission was made aware of some questions that were asked by the neighbors tonight, and so I can touch on those
Right.
as well.
We had a letter from Sherry Howard
Yep.
in here that we didn't address in citizens' comments, but we're gonna address them
Yep.
now.
So, on the screen in front of you, I do have the majority of the materials. I can work our way through them as we go. But the preliminary plat was a combination of 8 pages, which is, as a planner, I prefer. I appreciate the fact that it was broken out into multiple pages because it's a lot easier for me to read and go through. We'll discuss that in the next one, which is in a 1-page preliminary plat, which is a lot harder to review. But in this case, page 1 and 2 is going to be the preliminary items, a larger, I guess you would say, the overview. And as we work our way through, we get into more detail from grading, from contours, and what else is required. So I can go through those individually. I can cycle through them as we go, but I do want to get to my comments. In general, it was pretty complete, but we did have some questions. And so in my packet, you did see them. There's going to be some clarifications and corrections that I just want the applicant to be made aware of. So from a lot circulation standpoint, there's my comments. I do have also Sandy's comments that I can go through. As you probably saw, they're quite kind of extensive. A lot of them are pretty much identical to my comments. She identified a few more. I identified a few more little small things. So I can go through those tonight as well. But from a layout standpoint, our code does state that lot lines shall be at right angles, and if it can't be at right angles, to request a waiver why. So as part of our preliminary process, we identified several of them, they're off right angles a little bit, and all you have to do if they can't comply with that requirement is request that waiver. When you do get into conservation subdivisions, you tend to have that because you have more curvilinear streets, you're trying to preserve open space, so it's acceptable and understandable, and town code just requires you request that waiver at that time. So I identified the lots that I looked at that were pretty close to what was off kilter. At this point, lot lines adjacent to outlots are assumed to be reasonable to preserve that outlot, so I didn't include those, I strictly just did the ones that were adjacent to some street frontages. Sometimes the way to work around that is to actually have a jog in that property line. It's not ideal, but if you can't do it that way. So those are just one comment there. Boulevard entrances, the town does require a boulevard entrance. I know one wasn't shown, but anything that's over 20 lots does require a 50-foot minimum length boulevard entrance, which shall have a sign in it. And so that is a requirement in the town code. That also is meant to say that that does not, or that vision, or that signage and that boulevard cannot interfere with vision triangles, and so we do need to see that at some point prior to the final plat of where that would be located, so we can confirm that it would not impede the vision triangles. That said, we do need to see vision triangles on there as well, so we do need to see that. And then I also put in a note here is trail standards to match development agreement. We don't have the development agreement on our agenda here tonight, but it's coming as we work our way through items. We wanted to have a little bit of discussion and actually about what also to include inside that one. In what we did for Barnwood Developers Agreement is actually less of a standard than what our actual code is, and so we are proposing at that time to do that same thing that we did with Barnwood. Our typical code says 20-foot wide easements and 10-foot wide trails. That's quite large compared to what most communities are doing now. You would prefer to keep that one, and so in Barnwood, it was 12-foot wide easements with an 8-foot wide trail, and we are proposing that in the developer's agreement at that time to still match. And so that's why my condition on here is just trail standards to match the developer's agreement, as we've already kind of set precedent in a conservation subdivision. Barnwood did have a little bit of a different situation. It did have Lake 5 frontage, and so that was a wider area there, but internal to the site was a little bit different. That also gets to another issue that Dan and I went back through our meeting minutes and couldn't track down, is what is the ownership of that trail? Is it private or is it public? And so that's a conversation piece for the Plan Commission to have with the applicant here tonight. And so I can keep going, or you guys can stop and have that discussion point, but that was one thing that we...
Let's nail it right now.
Yeah.
Not a point of us, I assumed it was going to be owned by the HOA. That was my presumption without, I don't remember ever discussing it.
Yeah,
So-
and that's the reason why we went through our minutes and we're trying to figure it out. We just didn't have a discussion of who the ownership is.
Yeah.
When we get to the other one tonight, that one is connected to potentially a larger trail network, and so where that one's a little bit different. This one is completely internal to the subdivision and doesn't have a more regional connection. And so I was not one way or the other, as long as they were designed to what we would agree to the same standard.
I was going to say, because Barnwood is tied in with public trails, one which of course is the Town of Elizabeth Parks. Hillside Ridge is not. It would just be internal.
Yeah, so that's the discussion point.
Any issue with that from the board?
No.
It's not gonna connect up to anything in the future.
It's connected to the road right of way at such time, unless the town would to be going in and put in something else to connect to that point. We don't have it's not in anyone's trail plans to have something connect to this point. So it's all internal at this time. It's not to say that there is the school that is to the north at some point. So we do need to kind of have that potential discussion. If we would prefer to see it public, then we just need to make sure that those are also easements over that same 12 feet.
That was my concern, is because of this possibility of a school up here. I know the road makes a right-of-way or a cul-de-sac at that point, but the trail, if it goes, then kids are gonna walk on the road, or, how are they gonna get up to school if the school gets built there? And the possibility is greater with the more subdivisions that we put in, creating more homes for kids, so that possibility of that being built on is a lot stronger. And I'm just wondering do we want kids on the road, or
No.
is there no?
Well, the other issue we have is this trail as designed is pretty much, I would say, in the rears of the property and not an actual destination trail, but more of a leisure trail.
Yes.
And so those are two kind of very different things. And if it needs to have that discussion to go somewhere else in that developer's agreement, that would be something that would be ironed out at that time.
Yeah.
I'm still okay with the HOA having it, to be honest with you. I think
Yeah.
you're saying, it's just, we don't know if a school is ever gonna go there, if they will go there, we don't know. And it really doesn't make its way to the back of the property anyway.
The only way is to come up through this way and go,
Right.
but that's the potential is there, that the homeowners association can decide to put a short trail up from outlot 1 up to the.
And I can't see this being a high-traffic subdivision there either. I mean,
And it's not connected to another subdivision.
Right.
If a school was to go there, there would be a more direct route to get to a school than through this subdivision. So.
Right. Everybody okay with the HOA, or do you want to see something different?
No.
HOA?
I'm
Okay.
okay with it.
Move on then.
All right, working our way through, from a lot circulation standpoint, the preliminary plat shall also include, I believe, the square footage for each lot. I think it's on acreage, we require both. So again, just a cleanup action. Typically, I would recommend at that point a table, because otherwise the lots just get a little bit too crammed, I guess you would say. So a table that detailing those items. Table, and Waukesha County also recommended this, would just be a table showing all curves and tangents, just a basic item on that one. And then, as I mentioned, the trail standards to match. From a roadway standpoint, would be, right now, there are no named streets streets except for the main thoroughfare. So add public street to what it's currently. There's missing, one of the roads is missing a public street name at this point. Just call it public street. But it should, the review of those street names shall go before the town as well as Waukesha County prior to final plat approval. So just have to submit that. Make sure all those radius and tangents between radiuses are at least 100 feet, and if they can't be, I think where one of them are we're underneath, a waiver shall be requested for at that time. So again, as they come back with a new submittal for a final plat, a cover letter documenting all these issues, and then the requested waivers as a separate document from that. I would also say that in addition to note 7, which says that all roads shall be dedicated to the public, that shall also be stated on the actual roads, on the surface of the plat, town standard there. And then all street systems shall be designed to have one end of the street no longer than 500 feet. We are going to be over 500 feet in this one, so again, another requested waiver. The fire department was okay with the length as long as they had the radius, and they have the radius now according to this one. We discussed that at our last meeting, but again, that will have to be a requested waiver at that time as well. As I mentioned, road names. Please state the Beverly Lane road grade at this point, just a note calling out that road grade. The Waukesha County also did comment on lots, some of the, let me go back to my plat here. The lots to the north here. These lots coming through here, we discussed it at the DRT meeting. These lots that have, need a minimum of 50% of their area can't have more than 10% grade change. And I believe this is the intent of this one is to also have walkout basins and exposed basins on these ones at least. So just provide documentation of what that percentage grade is there. When I was doing it off my scale, it was pretty close from my understanding. So just provide the, just in your curve table, or not your curve table, your lot table, state the area of grade at that point and just that they comply with that standard. So.
Sure, I didn't get a chance to see the walking shop.
Yeah, I'll, yeah, they came yesterday or today?
I believe they came today, actually.
Today, so, Waukesha does not have one for the next one. We'll only see these ones.
And Dan, was that the letter dated July 25th? From Waukesha County?
The Hillside Ridge review, the one that came from Sandy is this one in front of you. I believe Dan put them on here.
Or from Kunkel?
From Kunkel, I'm talking from Waukesha County.
Okay. All right, because we had two. One from the county, one from Kunkel. Okay.
There's a second one from the county.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one from Latham.
Okay, so this is,
Yeah, sorry.
this is old.
No, that one's from just a different department.
Okay,
So that one's primarily stormwater. This one's-
okay, right.
So.
Well, I did read it somehow.
I'm bleeding.
Can't tell.
Stab myself apparently with my pen. All right, going through, keep working our way through. Additional comments that I kind of came across, which was we need to address State Highway 164. DOT may require approval, and if not, we probably should have a no access listed on that little piece of frontage there, even though it's just a small one, because I don't believe we are having that be an access point at this time. So a little dotted line that shows no access for people to be accessing down to 164 at that time. And so those are the kind of the only other comments on that one. Because it does touch 164, they have the ability to review it. They may waive it, but at least they just need to be notified of that. All right, soils. Add additional fields to the table on page 6 of 8 depicting the lots which are to be served by mounted conventional. I think it was a mix based off of your soil reports. Unless you're going to be planning on doing all one or the other, just state that. But based off of the soil reports that I reviewed, it appeared that some of them could be some conventional, some of them could be mounted, just based off what we had. So just kind of list in that same, I would say, lot table, just what's the potential for those lots.
Dan, I'm sorry. The issue with 164, are we talking about foot traffic or in terms of the control of water flow off the entire site?
Typically access. So when I'm talking access, I'm just saying access.
Okay. And
They want to make sure there's no road put through there.
no, okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't impact nor the walking trail, and it also doesn't impact the whole issue. Because I remember a discussion dealing with the residents were concerned about the water coming off the property and going towards that would be the southwest. which is towards 164.
Drainage is still going there, and the waters will continue to go there, but it will be treated first and kind of work its way through. So I think you guys can touch on that if there's questions on the water issue, but
Okay.
we'll get there.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry. Also did want to comment on that I believe the civil drawings need to be updated. As you can tell on this preliminary plat, the stormwater is outside of this area as we work our way through in that, what is now considered an outlot in that bottom area. We had a kind of larger basin on this one, so I believe you're probably still working through those documents. This one just needs to be updated to reflect what you have as well. So.
The engineering plans we submitted to the last week have that.
Okay, good. All right, so continue to work my way through here. Revised the basement restriction note for 18 inches. Is that correct, Brian, that you typically deal with the 18 inches above seasonal high groundwater?
Yes.
Yes. The Waukesha County is 1 foot. The town is 18 inches actually. So just revise that note to say 18 inches instead of 1 foot. I believe Waukesha County is potentially looking, and the town is also looking for soil data on. We have it for the pits, but we're looking for a little bit more information on the actual borings for observation numbers 501 through 554. So just provide that information. Yeah. Yep. And then I had in here additional comments from Waukesha County, and I knew that Sandy was still doing her review, so my last comment at the end is also conditioned on these comments, but I'm still working my way through. From easements and building sites, we didn't see a typical building envelope, which the town typically requires on a plat. So if you just want to do one typical building envelope or put the building envelopes on every lot, you would do that at that same time. Stormwater easements shall be labeled as recorded by separate documents. Preliminary plat also shows drainage easements on 5 and 6, so just state that at the end. Vision corners, as I mentioned, and then berms. I see that there's berms proposed on the site. Just make sure that those berms are in accordance with the town zoning code. So that we'll get to when we get to the SDP later. We may need to address it there, but it just needs to make sure that we're in compliance with the town zoning standards. It's all again about vision and height and various different locations. So grading and drainage. I had a modification to an inclusion of an additional drainage note. Waukesha County, as well as myself, kind of noticed some potential issues with grading along 40 through 43. I'm guessing you probably had seen that comment already. So.
That has been resolved.
Okay.
Grading plan.
Yep. Address those additional comments, and then according to the land division checklist, there's a 75-foot setback from the wetlands. You do have some on here. I know you're outside of it for development purposes, but just put a 75-foot buffer on it, and just needs to be shown on that one. So. Additional items, Waukesha County approval, Village of Sussex. Sussex is requiring a additional, I believe, zoning process for you guys at this time as well. I question the legality of that at this point, and so that's a separate nature. But not only in addition to the land use or the land division pieces that I believe they're making you go through a land zoning process as well as part of this. So I've started that discussion with Kathy to figure out where that came from and what it is, because some other things that we have come across. So that's a separate item, but I did just want to make sure that was aware. And then I have not seen a review come from the Department of Administration yet, so it would just condition it upon that as well.
Have they explained to you why they're doing that? I mean, you guys have another development you're looking at in the Village of Sussex, so you're probably getting a lot more feedback than we are.
It's from our conversations with Sandy and Jason Fruth, is that is a normal part of their process, that all zoning approvals at the town level have to follow the same process going through park and planning, Lupe County Board.
No, we're talking, I think he's asking for Sussex.
Oh, sorry.
So I saw Casey's review letter that said you guys must also follow their PED process or something.
Oh, that was an email intended for a different government.
Oh, so it was,
Yes.
it was sent to me on that one, so okay, that
Yep.
makes me feel a little better.
Yes.
Clear. All right,
Everything's fine. There we go.
It's fine.
We're getting our neighborhoods mixed up.
Just wait till you need a JPC meeting, though.
Pages 1 and 2 should also include a legend. I didn't see a legend that included that one, so just a simple legend on that one, in case those pages ever get separated. Address the plans for the overhead power lines. We did notice that you did have overhead lines going to that, so are those to be abandoned? What's going to be happening to those? So a note should be stated what should be happening to those overhead lines. And then, as I mentioned before, applicant shall discuss the trail ownership with Plan Commission. It sounds like you guys have already done that. Revise note 1 on sheet 6 to state outlot 1 to 6. Right now it says 1 to 5. We added that additional outlot, so that note just needs to be updated to also include that. Your summary sheet on lot 6 says 55 instead of 54 lots. I'm sure you guys probably made that change already as well as part of that. Revise the total area calculations. There's just 2 conflicting numbers on there, so again, just that summary sheet, revise that. Address at some point in your response letter what's going to happen to that access easement. I know you guys did your title work, but I believe you said it wasn't a recorded document. I believe the neighbors think it is a recorded document, so probably just provide some evidence to what that is, and then what would happen at that time. Waukesha County did have that comment as well.
Can I just speak to that? I mean, I guess I'm proposing we just put the easement on the plat, and just, whether or not there is, we don't mind just granting them the easement.
It's going through one of where your lots are at this time, so.
It's really not.
It's
not at all.
Do you have it down the side of it, I thought?
There's we'd have to adjust the lot to the west. Just a small portion that comes out.
Yeah, a portion
So
of it was,
I mean,
16.5-foot strip.
I think they've got some question. In fact, I think they filed a
Yeah, so-
title because I don't think they feel like they have an easement. And I don't care if they want. I'm not looking to landlock someone, but we will grant them an easement one way or another.
Okay.
Give them access if that works for everybody.
until such time that the road's there.
Right, I like it to sunset
And
when we give them
responded
a road.
accordingly that
Okay.
their intent is to access from the road there.
Is that the owner just to the north?
Depending
Canada
on.
owns it.
Oh,
Piece
yeah,
of
you're
land
right.
in-
Yep, I'm
Yeah.
well aware of it.
Is that gotten settled at all? Or-
It's still open.
Yes, it's gotten settled. I mean, we're gonna put in a road and
They're gonna get
and
access.
They're gonna take it.
It's a lot.
Well, ironically, we're gonna pay them to put it in.
Okay.
We're sitting on a nice lot right now, that's about to get road frontage. So it is an outlot, so they'll have to come in at such time to do something with it. The only concern I would have potential is now you'll have an outlot that is not governed by the same standards as everything else around
The
it.
HOA.
Because
Yeah.
it is outside of it at such time,
Mhm.
so that's a separate issue on that time, so. The
There's no- I mean,
DNR
there's- you guys
wetlands,
have had discussion with them, and there's no way to rectify this now.
I'd rather see it get,
Unless you guys are willing to put a recapture agreement on it or something, which, you know, that used to happen back in the day. They used to do spite strips. I mean, it's kind of unfair, but, you know, we're gonna put it in the road and they're gonna sell a lot because we put it in the road.
They don't intend.
the problem is we're gonna end up with a lot in the middle of a subdivision that's not part of the subdivision.
Yeah.
And I have a problem
Well,
with
that's
that.
the recapture.
I mean, maybe
Agreement.
that's, yeah,
They've expressed that they don't intend to pay us anything for the road nor sell it for what it's worth. And they're pursuing a title claim, I think, to recover probably some of their own purchase price and maybe make it better. I don't know.
yeah, so let's address this, your concern. So we've got a lot in the middle of our neighborhood that isn't governed by the HOA.
Correct.
I don't really have a potential solution for that. Is there something you have in mind?
it's an outlot right now, and so
I
it does
understand
not
that.
have the buildability at such time. They would have to come in and reflect that. As a condition of approval, I would have to weigh in on.
I would have a problem approving them when they come in though, considering what you guys are all doing right now.
What size is that lot, I guess, I
I
imagine?
think it's 1 acre, 2 acres.
Yeah.
1
I mean,
acre.
it meets, it's big enough that it can,
If they comply with
It's
the
buildable.
ordinances, I don't know why.
yeah, you can't really stop them.
Well, they're not gonna quarry it or mine it, right?
Well,
Depends what the state does.
I mean, it's not big enough, it's commercially unfeasible from the standpoint of that.
Yeah.
So the most feasible economic scenario would be that it's gonna be another lot.
Well, they're gonna
with
wait
a
till the
home on it.
subdivision's in, and then they're gonna
Absolutely.
sell it as a lot.
Sure.
Is what they're gonna do. But that puts the issue of, they're not part of the homeowners association at that point. They're not part of any of the covenants, is nothing. They fall under our zoning and nothing, not the SDP or GDP, nothing.
They can build on it, but how are they gonna access it? They're not part of the subdivision, they can't use the roads.
Not sure.
It'll be a public street.
Yeah, they can, it's
Well,
public
it's a
roads.
public
Public
street though,
road.
so they can,
Yeah, they're gonna, I mean, it's right there.
Yeah.
What are
It's
our
too
options,
bad,
Kevin? Do we have any options on this?
I think if the lot is, conforming, there's nothing.
It's
I
just
can
how
really
it's
think
gonna
of at
be.
this point, Yeah.
in, Mr. Chairman, in dealing, I have dealt with Payne and Dolan, but very superficially through the parks. And obviously with Clint Weniger and at his professional level. And if he is indicative of other people within the company, I can't see them doing something crazy. You know, these are very professional people.
Right, but
And
it's,
you-
it's,
I
I don't think it's a matter of
understand
that, but
It's
now,
money.
what you're doing is you're setting aside, you have people in a subdivision paying for a homeowners association and having certain covenants and everything for
Right.
the way homes are built, the setbacks and everything else, and now you're gonna have one lot right in the middle of this thing that is now, does not have to abide by those whatsoever. And this
Correct.
is gonna cause potential problems in the future.
Mhm.
This is where people get upset, and we get phone calls, and things go bad.
Understood. Yeah.
And
Is that
that's
big
just what
enough
I'm
that they
bringing up.
can start to have animals on it? Is it big enough?
It's 1
Or
acre.
It's
horses
1 acre.
or?
It's just 1
The most
acre.
likely problem is, vehicle count in the driveway, and fences, we're pretty particular about fences, whatever kind of fence that you can have.
Right.
You know, there'll be a house in there that can have over.
Yeah.
And it won't meet any architectural control board, they don't have to submit any plans, so they could build whatever they wanted.
20 years from now, people are gonna look at us and go, what were you thinking?
Well, I know.
And it's,
I
I
don't
mean,
like
it's,
that.
there's nothing you can do about it right now, but they're gonna look at us and go, why did you allow this? When in reality, there's nothing else we can do.
So you made all attempts to Payne and Dolan, obviously.
I'm assuming they just want an exorbitant amount for it.
Did they give you a price?
No, they just they want us to put in the road and then they want
They
to
wanna
sell
sell
the lot.
it.
They have intentions.
They intend to sell the lot,
Right.
once we make it something they can monetize.
So once they sell the lot though, then it becomes incorporated into the HOA.
No.
No.
No, it does not.
No.
See, that's the
Okay, I'm
trouble.
glad I
That's
answered
where
that
the problem
question.
is.
So it's outside.
If they would be willing to enter into the PUD process, that could be the, I don't want to say olive branch, but if they voluntarily enter into it at this point, we would modify the ordinance to include them inside of that PUD. It would still be an outlot, not platted as part of this, but would still be as part underneath that GDP at that point. So if they ultimately ever became a lot, buildable lot, then they would be governed by that because it is underneath that ordinance. So,
I mean, can we make sure we put good notes in all this when the next board is here
Yeah,
and
that makes
everybody's
sense.
questioning why this happened and
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
they wanna strangle all of us?
yeah, no.
You first.
Because you never know
I'm always
who's
gonna
going
be
to
the
buy
first.
something, and you might get a very creative person who purchases it and could cause problems for
So you end
whoever's
up on
surrounding.
Fox 6.
Oh,
Building a house upside down or something.
well,
All right.
I'm thinking
So just
animals,
let's-
chickens, I mean, who knows
That's-
what?
Yeah, it's 1 acre, but I mean, it would, so, but there is, I mean, to your point, Gene, there's one right there. This is outside of a subdivision technically, 1 acre lots, we can have chickens.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with chickens, and I don't think 3 chickens are gonna cause a lot
If
of
you have a
problems.
rooster, there's a
But
problem.
you can't on 1 acre. But you can't on 1 acre.
You can't have a rooster?
Correct.
Not on 1 acre you can't.
No.
And dogs are allowed to the roosters, by the way.
Kevin,
Anyway.
maybe the solution is gonna be, maybe you guys can reach out and see if they wanna voluntarily become part of the
Part of
PUD.
it.
And
Yeah.
therefore-
Could you guys at least do that?
Yeah,
I'd appreciate
and then
that.
that would
Or we would
assuage
appreciate that.
Yeah.
anxieties.
That would be
All
great.
right.
The last piece that I have on, or I think I have one more, on this sheet is providing the confirmation, DNR confirmation on the wetland. I haven't seen any of that then.
Is there a shirt that would-
Okay.
No, that's the other site.
Oh,
We do
sorry.
have we just, within the last week, I can forward that to you.
Okay.
DNR was out on site probably a week and a half ago, and I did concur with the delineation. So,
Okay.
I have a lot of understanding.
That was a comment from Waukesha County as well,
Yeah.
so. All right, and some additional notes.
Waukesha County stated that they'd like to see the utility easements. We typically have a note on ours that says precise utility easements shall be determined by the utilities and included on the final plat, because you guys haven't met with the utilities probably at this time to go through that yet. So we in ours would typically require that. And then the two outlots, the 6 outlots just state what those outlots are for, and so I kind of just drafted what one note would look like from that standpoint. And then the last one on there is just, we always just check the historic preservation database and make sure there's no archaeological sites on it, and just, if there are none, state none. So those are kind of my additional items. We can go through Waukesha County's review letter, but I also then have the comments that came from the neighborhood as well. So I think those are the bulk of my comments that needed a dialogue.
Questions or comments from the board at this point?
I have a question. I don't see a report in here in regard to the water, and I know that's what the neighbors to the south are most concerned about because of, as you've all seen pictures of what has happened in the past on that property with the water. And you've got these proposed ponds, etc. Is that a guarantee that it's not going to go to the south, or how does that work? I'm not an engineer, so.
Okay, we do have a letter from the July 25th letter from Lake Calvi addressed the preliminary stormwater application. So he has reviewed and recommended approval of the preliminary plat with our preliminary submittal. So, as was discussed in our previous meetings, the stormwater ponds are going to be along the south part of the site. The discharge will be directly west and then south down the little strip that goes towards 164.
Now, is that going to affect the property across the road? Because we do have a letter from Sherry Howard, but I mean, it's owned by the Howard family.
So I can get into some detail there. So we've gotten a little more information as to how the water flows into that area. There's only a 24-inch culvert under Highway 164, just northwest of the intersection of Howard's Lake.
Yeah.
What we found out with our field work and reconnaissance was when the water from this whole area comes to that culvert, when it fills up to a certain elevation, there is a culvert under Howard Lane that goes to the southeast that drains the 164 intersection. A little further to the southeast, there's a high point in the ditch. And that high point in the ditch is an overflow. When the water gets up to about 962, it's going to fill and go southeasterly on the right-of-way before the flow will split. Some of the flow will go under the 24-inch culvert under 164. Some of the flow goes southeasterly in the 164 ditch. So the change to the 24-inch culvert towards Mrs. Howard's property was really very negligible. It would actually be a little bit lower. When the ponds are going to reduce the flow towards 164. So she'll be seeing less water through that culvert, just because when it gets up to a certain elevation, most of that water is heading to the southeast in that overflow.
Okay.
Mitch also did provide two different letters, one dated August 5th and one dated, that's in your packet, that probably, the August 5th I don't believe is in your packet, but, or maybe it is, but.
I don't think so.
It was printed separately, it should be.
We have an August 2nd, but, and July 25th.
So, and his comments also kind of, I don't want to say default, but definitely also do include Waukesha County's review and requirements to meet Waukesha County's stormwater.
And they are the ultimate authority on the stormwater.
Stormwater,
The other comments, one of the questions that the neighboring property owner had was a stormwater liability. And so I don't know if you want to read off that question for the applicant.
Want me to read it?
Sure, that's fine, Chair.
The Declaration of Protective Covenants for Phase 1 states that the Homeowners Association has no duty to ensure the safety of persons in connection with the drainage areas. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, it's the third bullet.
Or to warn of dangers concerning them, that neither Newman Companies nor the Homeowners Association is responsible for the safety of any drainage area for use by humans or pets, and neither represents nor warrants that any drainage area is safe for such use. With the detention pond so close to the property lines, this waiver of responsibility is a concern.
Is this common?
Who is liable then if somebody drowns in the pond? If some kid gets in there and drowns?
I mean,
Then are they coming after the...
Trespass on the HOA property?
No, what if it's somebody from the HOA that?
Somebody from the subdivision.
Let me address, I mean, there are stormwater ponds in every single neighborhood in Wisconsin, and I have never seen a sign that's warning people not to go in them, in any of them, including my own neighborhood where I have a stormwater pond. I don't think we've got any different condition here in this neighborhood than we have in most of the subdivisions we develop and my friends and family live in. So, while I do appreciate the concern and I don't want anything bad to happen, you know, do I think a homeowners association should be responsible if something were to happen to somebody in a pond? I really don't. I don't think that the responsibility of a homeowners association down the road to warn people not to go in the ponds. And I repeat, my kids have fished in my neighborhood pond, you know.
I don't think it's, I mean, from my perspective, it's not the area that you have to warn them of it, but I mean, you know, where it gets down to that, it's not the responsibility or for the safety of any of the drainage area for use by humans or pets, and neither represents nor warrants that any drainage area is safe for such use. It's more looking at is if something does happen, who's responsible for it at that time. I'm assuming it's still going to be the HOA though. I mean, it's not going to be.
Well, as far as from the town's perspective, it would not be the town's responsibility.
That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's not the town's responsibility to maintain the stormwater drainage area or any of the swales or anything. From my perspective, it would be the HOA that has the responsibility to do that. But they have the ability to freely draft their covenants how they want.
I mean, it becomes a
and
civil suit then.
homeowners who buy into that neighborhood have to read the covenants. And that's one covenant that's in there.
But we're approving these covenants, right?
you're reviewing them.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in our code that says, you know, that we're looking to make wholesale changes to match what we want as a community. They are private covenants, and if they comply with our base minimums, the above and beyond are things that we're as a body, as a town, not typically making comments on. So we have to review them per our code, but from a standpoint of making wholesale changes to them is not something that we do as a town.
The problem is, Dan, people are so crazy nowadays. I mean, the slightest you blink wrong at somebody and you get sued, you know. And this is my concern. Where is the liability going to land if something terrible does happen to happen? All right.
As you mentioned, it would be a private property matter at such time, because this is no different. If you look at the setbacks from this one,
Okay.
close to the property, they are the exact same distance that we just approved for Haas Farms. So, you know, the stormwater ponds there are just as close as the lot lines, and the issues there are all the same. So, I would say that this is no different in a situation than what we've approved in the past for Barnwood, for Haas Farms, and it becomes a private property matter, and that's the reason why that restrictive covenant document is not enforceable by the town typically.
But I don't remember reading this language about them not being responsible.
Yeah.
And I'm okay if the covenants are mute on responsibility, because that's a legal problem somewhere else. But it seems to me the town bears some responsibility. If we pass on covenants that take all the responsibility away from everybody else, kind of leaves us left, the only ones that aren't indemnified in this agreement.
If something happens, everybody's getting sued.
Sure, but then they're gonna bring
That's
this
how
document
we
that
do
we
it.
approved saying they're not responsible of.
That's the
And I'm
reason
not
why
so sure I like
That's the
that.
question here.
I also
mean-
don't have those restrictive covenants on for approval tonight, because those come with our final plat, and so there's going to be review and further discussion. We are going through the preliminary plat process at this time, so there's going to be time for reviews in those pieces at this time.
I also want to indicate that that's a particularly important piece of the covenants, to be honest, that are in all of ours, and this is the most detailed review I've ever had of that particular clause. It's not, these covenants, declarations, kind of, a lot of them, attorneys kind of just sort of stamp out these things on a pretty regular basis, and that's the wording that's probably 90% of covenants would be my guess. So if there's something that you find take offense to,
I think this one, we're gonna want some interaction between our attorney and you guys on this one to find out what the proper wording is here. And I mean, and just because something says there is no liability doesn't mean there isn't.
Yeah.
But what Mark is saying is if we're granting them and saying, well, yeah, we don't think they're liable, then what's to make them say they're not gonna come back at us and say, well, if you're saying they're not liable, then you're the ones that are liable.
Yeah.
Even though we don't have any authority to say you're not liable, really.
we're,
Unless we take responsibility for it, we can't say you're not liable.
Yeah.
we're flexible on what's
Yeah.
in there. If there's not many.
But I mean, if somebody does trespass, I mean, they could same thing with a pool. I mean, somebody trespasses on private property and drowns in a pool. I mean,
Yeah.
there's lawsuits there too.
Except they don't have a town board that passed saying that they're not responsible for somebody who trespasses in their pool.
Right.
Yeah, it's a
That's-
very sticky, very importantly, obviously a
I
legal
mean, as long as
issue.
our attorney's okay with it, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
I mean,
We'll have the
it's
attorney
not
look
a
at that
huge
one.
issue, but it doesn't seem right that we are even writing an okay on a document that's absolving somebody from civil liability for something that we don't really have a voice in. So that's why I say I'm better with it just being mute on the topic than I am with approving something that says
Specifying.
you're
Yeah.
not responsible. You don't have to worry about it.
Right. And that's not up for approval tonight, it was an
Right.
informational
Yeah.
piece at this time.
Right, that's
so-
just,
Yep,
Right.
I mean,
appreciate the comment.
But it's something Sherry had in
Yep.
here, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Do you want me to continue to go through Sherry's comments here first before we go back?
What's your question first, Ed, and then?
well, no, let's continue on that.
Yeah,
and
we've got a
then
lot to
I
get
would-
through.
Something
Okay.
I'm looking at here.
The other two substantial comments, but comments that are related to the actual development are no lamp posts. They had requested that, as Lisbon being rural, that there would be no lamp posts. The town's code requires lamp posts. So our town code says the town board shall require the developer to pay for the installation of street lamps if they're required along the streets proposed to be dedicated of the design compatible with the neighborhood and the proposed development. So if such lamps shall be placed at each major intersection and connected to the other town's road and other locations, all street lamps shall be lit with energy efficient bulbs. It's up to the applicant to, as part of this process, if they wish to have street lamps for their own neighborhood for safety purposes, that can be included in this GDP, SDP process. That's where we would regulate that. Typically, if this was just a standard subdivision, there wouldn't be any stopping, I guess you would say, an applicant or anybody from putting in a street lamp for their own facilities.
We have other subdivisions that have required lamps, and not only that a lamp's required, but a specific style
Yeah,
lamp
style.
is required.
And this,
Yeah.
and in the GDP,
Yeah.
it's in, I believe you guys have this.
So this isn't the first one of these in Lisbon, but that's what she's at. She doesn't care about the intersection light, she actually wants that, but,
Yeah.
this isn't the only subdivision in Lisbon that
No,
would have lamp posts.
when Arrowhead Highlands, I used to have dark at night, and now it's all light, and I mean, it's progress.
Yeah, I see that as a non-issue.
No, it's a
I would
non-issue.
certainly rather see that within the HOA, within the covenants, within the subdivision.
And then the last one was the use of curb and gutter. The town has used curb and gutter, or I should say developers have used curb and gutter in the
Yeah.
town before. Hasn't been used in the past, and especially in cases where you have stormwater concerns. You need to be correctly directing water in the right areas, and that's the way to do it. And so in this case, that's the reason why it's being used here. So she had some
So
concerns
we
with that.
didn't, the curb is there to reduce the amount of trees that are disturbed. So if I have a ditch come down a 3-to-1 slope and 3-to-1 slope coming back up, it's gonna be disturbing a lot more trees, in that throat between the developed areas there. So I chose to put curb and gutter in there to mitigate, the amount of trees we'd be losing. So it's not gonna change if we had a ditch there, but it's gonna flow the same. I don't think it's gonna really change the flow of the water. It's all going down to our ponds. So it was a choice I made to reduce tree disturbance.
Any issues?
No.
Okay.
I think those were her comments.
I just wanted to bring up, if I may, the boulevard. That was a choice we made too. We didn't like the fact that there wasn't a boulevard on the other side of the intersection. So I thought it made for a fairly clumsy traffic maneuver with the, across the street there to Beverly Lane. So I didn't think having a boulevard on the west side, just traffic maneuvers without a boulevard on the other side, it just seemed clumsy if we had a boulevard there. So that's why I took it and recommend not placing a boulevard there.
that would be a waiver requirement.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
how does everybody feel about the boulevard? I mean, it's in our code.
If it matches the other street, I think that's more
Right.
important.
Well, I like the boulevard, but over on Twin Pine Farms on one side, and then Lake Five Estates has no boulevard, but Twin Pine Farms does. Right up there off of Perennial Terrace. So that's an example. I kind of like the boulevard. I think it's a nice entrance to the subdivision. But if it was omitted, I mean, I don't think anybody, I mean, it wouldn't break my heart, but I do think they look really nice. And I think there's a nice entrance to the subdivision.
Your subdivision would look nicer with the
I agree.
boulevard entrance.
Yeah. I like boulevards. You know what Jack was saying.
Yeah, I mean, the
I-
boulevard becomes a status symbol, and
I
there's
totally
nothing
agree.
wrong with that.
Yeah.
But it, you know, it states, here we are, obviously you're gonna get a sign, there's gonna be a sign there saying Hillside Ridge,
Yes.
et cetera.
We like the boulevard back in.
Okay. Takes care of that.
Is anyone opposed to that?
Anyone not want the boulevard?
Okay, either way.
Okay, that's done.
To me, it's up to them.
All right. Is there anything we need, oh, go ahead, you had some more to go down.
Nope, I think I went through all of
What
it.
about Sherry's paragraph A, or the first one?
Exhibit A. So we had
The
Exhibit
lot
A.
numbering issue.
Oh, that's, as part of the proposed covenants, that's a draft document, and so we'll do a more, kind of fine tooth review at that time. That's actually what I have on here is proposed protective covenants.
Let's verbally go through this, or
We
get
did,
to-
yeah, we did most of it already.
We did.
I understand that, I'm checking them off, but
Sure, yeah, the first one, he just explained that's gonna get fixed.
So,
Okay.
yeah, we're gonna go through with a kind of a more fine tooth comb at that time. It wasn't part of this review, it was kind of a, here's the information, kind of the draft stage, but it's not being approved, it'll be approved prior to the final plat.
Okay.
It's in a pretty good format. A lot of the language matches what we're gonna discuss later, which is gonna be the general development plan, and I wanna have a general conversation about that with the Plan Commission at such time. But I have on here draft for prior to the final plat approval. You can take action, or can review, but it's not required to take action tonight, it's not even on our agenda
Yeah.
at such time. And then town staff will review that for consistency with any draft development agreements as well as an approved SDP. So we just want to make sure that we are going to have 3 different guiding documents as we go along with this, which is going to be a developer's agreement, an SDP, GDP, and a plating, and we just want to make sure that we have, this is all in agreement. And so we just need to do a thorough review once we start to get through a few more of these steps.
First, second comment in here was about the retention ponds being really close to lots 44 and 44 through 54. In some cases, as close as 10 feet, and she has concerns if during a heavy rain event, will the ponds fail to detain the water, how much damage will occur to those proposed lots?
The emergency spillway is lower than the rock elevation, so if the water gets up high enough, it'll go over the emergency spillway to the west and not impact the road.
Okay.
is it lower than including the existing homes on Howard Lane?
I don't know what the elevation of the homes on Howard Lane are, but if the pond does fill up again, it's gonna be directed away from Howard Lane towards, to the west and then get into the 164 right of way. So, I mean, we're quite a bit distance, from the homes with the pond.
Or Jason,
Homes
I'll-
are versus-
You've got that wetlands field in here, right behind Lot 1, which is Eaters.
As you can see on the map there, the map shows, the maps have to show anything within 50 feet of the proposed development. There's no structures within 50 feet except for what you potentially see down here, which is further away from the ponds. So the homes are located further away. The proposed stormwater is in approximate distance to the property lines, as similar to what was done with Haas Farms and Barlow, as from a proximity to a lot line. And it's just the way kind of stormwater ponds are. They typically are adjacent to a lot line. You're gonna see that in the next proposal as well. So from a location standpoint, while it is adjacent to the lot, there is nothing that's stopping it from being adjacent to the lot, more or less. So I think your concern is about the structures overflowing into that one, and I think the applicant addressed where that overflow is. If we want some additional information on that, I think we'll probably have to just request that from the applicant in their follow-up response letter. Just figure out what those elevations are of those homes, if they would allow them to access those sites.
I mean, there was previous and still is concern of the people on Howard Lane. I want to make sure we're continuing to address that and be mindful of them on Howard Lane.
Yeah.
That's all I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because aren't there pictures? Didn't Mr. Ader bring in pictures
Right.
of how their whole, because their lot is low, I mean, those lots are very low.
But
And they all come down and are
for the,
just,
to my knowledge and for the record, that's a problem we've seen throughout the town in spring, when the ground is still frozen, and we have rain events as we've been having, or we have snow melt. And of course, we saw that with Barnwood, remember?
oh yeah,
Where we had standing water.
well, they had no ditches either though.
Yeah, well, that's what the ponds are for.
Yeah.
To catch that, when the ground will not absorb the water, it will go into those ponds or be directed off the site. So, can I possibly, I mean, obviously water is, and the question of our liability. In the July 25th letter from Waukesha County, on page 2, as part of this document, there's a section called report, and I was wondering if you were aware of that, sir, or you had looked at it, and where it says, the timeline on erosion control, and it goes on, starting with item number 8, and continuing.
Okay, so this was the first step in the county's review of the stormwater process. It's a preliminary application.
Correct.
So what we didn't have at that point was the specific date is when are they going to start construction and when they're going to end construction. So his comments there are the timeline on the erosion control narrative was incomplete. For the next submittal, he wants more detail. We gave
correct.
that to him already with the next submittal that we've already.
Because some of obviously the concerns that have been raised, the liability concerns, et cetera, which stands alone. But the whole idea of controlling the water off the site, off, the 70 or what is it, 70-some acres?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I should have remembered that. Okay, so that was addressing that. Is the, on a milder note, is the pathway going to be paved or wood chipped? The walking path.
Paved was what was discussed early on.
Okay.
In the process.
It will
And
be
that
as
can be reflected in the development.
yeah, it will be certainly a selling point. And I mean, with Barnwood, we're seeing that. I know in I believe it's Hardeman Estates, which is right across from Barnwood, there is no path. But in these conservancy developments, and I don't know if it's an appropriate question, but I assume that the sewer and water is off the table, and these will all be well and septic scenarios. Okay.
At the Plan Commission's request, we did have a paved trail in the draft developers agreement as it is proposed right now, so.
Okay. Would it be appropriate if I can make a recommendation for the swales and the outlot areas, if you might consider areas that don't or would be difficult to cut? I know we're running into our weed ordinance in the town, but possibility of looking into a plausible, feasible mixture of prairie seed, which you could mix in with the grass. Because obviously if you cut everything that's in the outlot, and whether you have your retention ponds, you're going to have a goose problem, geese, because they love it. You've got water and you've got grass. It's a made-to for them. And so this would be, would be more beneficial, if nothing else, for biodiversity, which we're hearing more and more about. And I'm thinking in terms of yourself, saleability, who's buying these homes? These are millennials. And I believe they're a little bit more concerned about biodiversity than my generation.
What about maintenance with the prairie grass, though? That's usually a
Once the
burn.
prairie gets established, the maintenance is zero. Except, of course, you have a burn scenario, but that's why I'm being very careful on this, that you would go for a low, in other words, the more inexpensive mixtures you could find on the market to defray costs, but maintenance of that would be less than cutting. consistent cutting. I mean, it's just an inquiry and a suggestion. It is not, yes, you have to,
Yeah,
do that.
we've been experimenting with some of that out at the country village, which is by Cap's Farms.
Okay.
Get a chance to drive down Highway P.
Correct.
You know, if you look on we have development on the east side and the west side, and one of the east sides, the traditional grass, on this, it looks horrible. It really does, to your point. And then we did experiment with some prairie grass on the west side of the road, and it's beautiful. It looks like an Irish golf course, like it's really
Yes, I know.
nice.
Yeah.
So we are experimenting with some of those things, and we'll challenge Mark to come up with some thoughts too. And there's a consultant that we do work with in the stormwater institute, here.
All right.
To hear about some ideas there, because I agree that stuff's evolving fast.
Well, I'm thinking of who's buying these homes. I don't know, again, one last question. I don't know if it's well, I have that tendency. Can you estimate what your fair market value will be for your 1-story and your 2-story, well septic included, for the home? Because we often hear homeowners saying, this is going to devalue my property value. And I have said, I've gone on record as saying, no, it's not. You have to look at what's going into construction in this day and age, materials, et cetera, labor, all the things that are happening in your industry are incredible, especially your costs with the tariff scenarios we're having with Canada, blah, blah. So, do you have a generalistic?
I would expect the homes in this neighborhood at the day's end, when the lawn is in and the septic is in and the house is built, will be, the lowest would be possibly $425,000 up to $550,000. That's the window that I'm expecting for valuation in this neighborhood.
Okay. Not on record, not necessarily affordable homes, but
No.
we're not going to go there. Okay. I was looking at the development that you built on the other side of Lake 5 Road. I believe that is yours.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. That's very much in line.
Good.
I'm done. Did I ruin everyone's evening again?
Not yet. No, getting there.
Sorry, Chad. You're bigger than I don't want you to beat me up.
We didn't have to break out the taser yet.
The taser.
Oh, that would hurt.
Just for a minute. Chad, anything?
No.
Mark?
Nope.
Jane?
I had one thing under your comments under layout on the site. The Planning Commission and Town Board should decide if the northernmost cul-de-sac should be revised to a temporary cul-de-sac and lots 19 and 20 adjusted to allow for the future connection.
You beat me to my last comment, because I wanted to address this one with the applicant as we've gone through a lot of the smaller details. I wanted to kind of leave the last little large hiccup, I guess you would say, potentially. As you, I suppose I should go back to the plan. That way, way too much text on these slides. Come on. So, if you take a look here, the applicant, and I had pulled up the plat, there's a road reservation up here, 33-foot wide road reservation, which is the plat, and that was to come in here to potentially service this site. So at that time, if we abandoned putting that 33-foot road reservation on this property, potentially could null and void this development. That being said, this development is now served by a road itself, and so this 33-foot wide road reservation to get to this property may not be necessary, and so that needs to be a discussion point between the Plan Commission, because this site could have access via Hillside Road itself and would not need potentially get all the way to here. If we do wish to maintain that, we'd have to look at reconfiguring these two lots, potentially getting more here, moving these down, and continuing and doing a temporary cul-de-sac here, and then doing a 33-foot wide to connect to that point. So we'd have to do some reconfigurations. So that's a discussion point the Planning Commission needs to have. If we ultimately move forward with this, we probably then need to follow up as a town, not so much as the applicant, but as a town to address this 33-foot wide road reservation that runs that way.
That road reservation was meant specifically for this development?
It was meant, if you, this road reservation, you can see this dotted
Yep.
dashed line right here.
Yep.
It was meant that it would potentially be one coming this way. That could potentially, by not allowing that to move forward, could potentially impact this piece up here, but again, that piece also has access to Hillside Road. So, it was one of the things that we caught as we went through this review, so.
How does everybody feel about that? I mean, it's, Hillside Road is there.
Right.
Right.
They have their own access now.
Let me see if I can find the area, yeah, oh, here we go.
So I think the original intent for that is,
So here, this one here has access being here. So this road reservation is actually like here, so it went this way. This site has access to Hillside, this site has access through here, but the road reservation kind of runs this way. It doesn't say, I don't remember off the top of my head what happens when it gets to the entrance here, because these were platted at some point. So this could be just a remnant road reservation that the town did many, many years ago. We did some additional research on it, but I was only able to track it back to about here. So, that was my comment. And this,
And Dolan doesn't own any of those, do they?
and this being the school property has access to the north, so.
They do, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. they own
The one to the north.
Yeah, the one to the north.
Right there.
And
Right there, the
and
square.
the square right here that you're talking about.
That's the biggest square right there.
The big
Yeah.
square, the
Point,
field.
point up,
With
All
the
the way
no,
to
up,
the top.
north,
Yeah.
right,
All the way
right
to
there,
the top.
no. Right, yep, right there.
Yeah, that's right. And
Okay, that would make sense.
Yeah.
They probably bought it decades ago.
I don't have an issue with getting rid of it right away there, I guess. I mean, this is designed for this subdivision. There's access if need be.
That was my
Anybody
concern.
else
I
have an
think it's
issue with
just-
that?
No, I
Is
agree
that
with you.
land blocking?
No, they
It's
got
not,
access.
'cause they have
These
hillside
guys will have
access.
access down here. That road reservation was to get into here.
Right.
And these guys have access here.
Via
You
160.
guys have
Yeah.
access here. Everyone else has access. This was probably meant, that road reservation likely was meant to service this parcel. And now it doesn't necessarily need it because of its own access. So as a separate motion, as after final plat approval, the town should start investigating how to vacate that road reservation. Not really vacate, but remove that road reservation.
Okay,
Okay.
that's addressed.
Yeah, that
So
was,
then we'll have to address the other end at some point, if you guys want to make a note on that in the staff end, figure out what we gotta do there. If we need to do anything. Okay. And then Sandy's comments, is there anything we missed on there?
No, I think I sort of touched on the things that she touched on. The developer has requested an early start permit. It's not part of our agenda here tonight. So it's something that the town will have to start looking at here in the near future at the town board level, figure out if they want to have an early start for the road, for the road items. Any conditions of preliminary plat approval, it still hasn't, the zoning still hasn't worked its way through to the county for approval yet. It's still working through its change. We're at the next stage at the town level, but the county's still kind of, I guess you'd say, is a step behind because they're still going through their process. So,
Okay. You guys have, I mean, you'll have them.
We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got my copy.
Thank you.
Do we know why they came in so late?
What?
Sandy shares comments?
I don't know.
I can check your emails, you might have a note on there.
All right, I guess just, it's just not, getting the stuff when you sit down isn't.
Yeah.
No, it's hard because you.
I mean, this
it's
just
too
doesn't have to
much.
be an action item here tonight, because we're not actually looking for action on this.
The plat could. If
The
you
plat could.
Conditioned upon all of everyone's, Waukesha County, our review, their review, everyone's review. If we're comfortable with those questions that you've now answered, you could condition upon all of that. And then have those corrected before they get to the town board level. That's how I would typically recommend that is, make sure all of these items are corrected before it gets put on a town board agenda and hold it off until that time.
Yeah.
How does everybody feel about that with the plat? So we could possibly take action on the plat tonight, but contingent upon everything we talked about tonight. But then it would have to be corrected before it went to the town board level at that point. Or do you wanna see it when it's? Or do you wanna see it before it goes to the town board? Ed, Mark says he's good with it.
I'm
Thanks, buddy.
Any technical comments? No, I'm I
Throw
don't
them
want
right-
to
throw them
impede
right
the
in there.
process anymore.
Jane?
I'm good with comments.
Okay. Jane?
I'll go along with staff reviewing it.
Okay. Becky? You get
I'll
another
see
kick
it
at
again anyway, so.
And Brian?
I'm good with it.
All right. Anything else you need to add on the plat?
No, Jay stole my thunder.
She does that. When you're the Dom of Lisbon, you can do that. The Dom. Dom. I'll move that we approve the preliminary plat for the proposed hillside subdivision and recommend to the town board of the same contingent upon Waukesha County, Town of Lisbon engineer comments, and anything else that was discussed here tonight by the Plan Commission. Is there a second?
Second.
I think Ed wants to second that one.
No, I'm doing it.
Any other discussion?
What was the condition you said?
The town condition upon Waukesha County Plan Commission engineering comments and anything else we had talked about here tonight.
It will also have to JPC before it gets back to town board and department administration, so.
I'll add those with a second amend to that.
Yes.
Hopefully we can group them together, but yeah, every action item inside of that area has JPC review.
We got these stickers that say Lisbon Proud Incorporate. It means a lot right now. You guys are probably gonna wanna wear one of those to your next meeting.
Or not.
Highly recommended. No.
Yeah, probably not over there.
Yeah, I
Yes.
wurldn't wear it to Sussex.
No, not at
I'd
the
like to know how
JPC.
they could see if they have to take them off. That's
Yeah.
freedom of,
We'll talk about that somewhere else, what I agree with you. All right, is there motion made second and all discussion? Everybody's good with it?
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, and then the general development and specific development plan for proposed Hillside Ridge subdivision and recommendation of the town board of the same.
All right, I'm gonna go through this one a little bit more high level. It's because when we first went through, when I first came on board with you guys, one of my first tasks was to develop the community ordinance. We went through quite a few revisions of that piece of it, and working through the town attorney, for Attorney Hammis at the time. We actually typically would have required a lot more detail, specific prescribed detail, but the towns ultimately elected to kind of pull back on the SDP requirements, and therefore it's a little bit more flexible into what the Town Plan Commission shall require. So if you go through the ordinance here, I have our approval process starts here for a GDP SDP. The applicant has gone through the rezoning and the GDP at the time. Now the specific development plan approval process again starts at the Town Plan Commission, works its way to the town board, in which both the Town Plan Commission and the town board have to look at those at the, I believe there are 9 review criteria. And so as we go through these, just keep in mind those 9 review criteria. I can touch on those, but the SDP requirements strictly just kind of default back to our section 3 of our zoning code, which is typically our site plan approval process. Not every planned unit development is going to comply with everything that's in that site plan section. That's the reason why I had suggested to the applicant to submit a GDP SDP packet, and so that way, because that's typically what we see in this nature. And so what was included in there are the typical things. Now, the Town Plan Commission has the ability, as you can see, that item number 2 here, such other materials as information that may be requested by town staff, taking into consideration components and recommendations from the Town Plan Commission and when reviewing the general development plan, as well as a specific development plan. So from that nature, what you have in your packet is what was submitted by the applicant. Town Plan Commission does have the ability to request additional items if they deem necessary, because it is a very specific ordinance drafted for this project, for this development. And so there's a couple of things that we can touch on tonight. But in the packet, you do see some of the stuff that would be, as I mentioned in section 3, which is a preliminary plat, soil characteristics, grading plan, preliminary stormwater management plan. You've seen all those items. And they also did include what would be the design criteria from their architectural review committee. The comment that I have on that one is typically the design requirements end up being a HOA matter. And by including them into the GDP SDP, they now could potentially become enforceable by the town. And so that's a discussion point that you probably want to have. Or should they just be referenced by enforceable by the applicant? So sometimes GDPs get to this level of nature and they want to be enforceable by the town or by the municipality, or they do not. And this being one of our, again, our second PUD that we've done, we haven't really come across that yet. The last one submitted example building illustrations and then did some specifics on fencing and light and lamps and mailboxes and those things. But when it came to some of those other small things of the actual design, that was left out. And so the discussion point that we had is it's okay to include them if you want to be the enforcement agency. If you don't want to be the enforcement agency, you can default to the HOA and still include it in the packet. So I did want to make that point clear from the design criteria. Other things that we typically would see inside of a GDP in this case, which were not included, would be example but not prescribed architectural plans. I have that in my letter. Some fencing details. I know you guys are pretty specific on what your fencing would be, but typically they could have actual illustrations of what that fencing detail would be. And then the lighting details, an actual detailed drawing of what those would be so that they can actually be included in that GDP versus if the HOA decided to eventually just change their requirements, we now may have two separate ones versus if it's in the GDP SDP, it's actually an ordinance in conflict. So that's the kind of things that I wanted to bring up today. You have the flexibility to request the pieces because of that statement that says any other additional information required by the Plan Commission to request additional information if necessary.
I can tell you from my perspective, having the town liable for enforcing these, I do not want that. And all the rest of the board feels about that. And I usually don't chime in first, but I know where it's coming when there's a problem, so.
What happens when the homeowners association, as we've seen, after many years, dissipates and then what happens to some of these things?
In this case, it would be if you default to the homeowners association enforcing it, and that defaults, then the design standards are pretty much gone at that point, 25 years down the road, plus your extension, I think it was the time. If it becomes part of the GDP ordinance, then that will stay beyond the HOA, and it would be enforceable by the town at that point.
But we'd be required at that point to enforce it.
Yes, it would stay, but you would be required, and whoever would replace Brian at that time. I don't think you want to be doing this for another 25 years.
But if it falls,
Yeah.
with the HOA, if the HOA falls away, then it defaults to the town's zoning code.
Yes,
Would it default to the town zoning code at that time, or the town zoning code
at the time.
at that time?
If somebody was building new or doing any of those other improvements at the time. When you pull your permit. Right, Kevin?
Yeah, just to address that, I believe the declarations default to automatic extensions of the preservation of the HOA and not automatic dissolve. There would have to be a vote by a certain number of members to dissolve at a certain point.
Sure.
So if they vote to dissolve, what happens to the maintenance on all the ponds and everything
I think the stormwater maintenance agreement language requires, it's the common ownership of all.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Okay.
go back to an HOA, it just goes back to
Okay.
the ownership of the
Ownership,
Correct. Okay.
and that's the major ones.
And unfortunately, if they don't enforce it, then we'd have to do it and then bill them for it, I'm assuming.
now? Yeah. But
But there's
it's a
ownership.
shared ownership, not an HOA responsibility, so
Right.
that's.
We can be
that answers the
optimistic and say that's not going to happen.
See, I don't think it is, we get this question a lot, and I think
We've talked about it in here.
Yes.
there's a presumption that
Previously.
these HOAs are gonna dissolve, and since the ponds have, 30 years ago, ponds got dedicated to municipalities on a regular basis, and then they dissolved, and I live in a neighborhood that had a dissolved HOA. Since the ponds got dedicated to the HOAs, I've seen very active HOAs. Like, the HOAs, when we're gone for 10 years, they're still assessing dues and managing ponds and doing things, so I think the presumption that they're gonna be gone dates back to the time when the ponds were dedicated to municipalities.
There's no requirement to continue it at that point.
But you gotta do something with it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something you gotta do. I think the ones that disappeared were the ones that really just wasn't anything to do. it's a pond to
Right.
clear of snow.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, if there was nothing for the HOA to do, they were just,
Yeah, then
Common
why have
areas
it?
of enjoyment as well, like the paths and
Yeah.
which is fairly new
the
too.
top lots.
That's newer type of thing.
Also encourage HOA to stick
So maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but I believe it will exist.
I would really hate to see us get into that policing type of activity, plus the expense, plus we don't want to burn Brian out. I mean, how do you enforce that? So, positively speaking, I would hope the HOA would not dissipate and the rules would stay in place.
Well, like I said, even if it would, they're still gonna be required to maintain them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Did just bring up my next slide here, so I appreciate that. Missing, so these are additional items that I mentioned that could be possible. Items that I would say would be missing, and this is what we talked about actually in the preliminary plat piece of it, is this is where we would potentially include screening detail, or berming details. So that way we can confirm that they are actually complying with the town's berming detail. Top lot was addressed at the last meeting, but was not included in this packet or in the preliminary plat. And so this is where I would say this would be the time to put in the details for that top lot, lot 4, and make that as an actual section of this code. And then at the same time, also the actual trail design standard would also be potentially included in here, and maintenance of the trail and stuff like that. Because we're looking at it being a private situation, that should also have a maintenance piece to it. I think the maintenance piece was, but the design standard work. So I would say those are three things that I would like to see in here, in addition to what's already included now.
Everybody's good with that?
yes.
So lot 4 was gonna be where the top lot's gonna be?
It was moved from what was five to
Yeah.
2-4 at the last meeting.
Okay. Everybody's understanding that?
Yeah, we have a standard package that we put in.
Okay.
So then that just brings you
So
back
trail
to-
standard designs, that's what we were talking about with those being, asphalt. Okay.
8 feet paved.
8
8 feet, 12 foot right away.
Yeah.
Everybody's good with that?
12 foot width of preserved space.
Okay.
Yes, 12 is, that's excellent.
All right. Everybody's good with that? I don't see anybody shaking no, so.
Yeah.
So then the last piece then is these other pieces with the Plan Commission. Like I said, this is typical what we could see of example but not prescribed architectural illustrations depicting kind of those pieces. I know you had said that you're not requiring people to design to a certain spec, but maybe, if the Plan Commission wanted to see some of what possibly could be there, you could put those as examples, not prescribed. Fencing details, actual illustrations of fencing details, so the Plan Commission can get an understanding of it if you know them, and then lighting details if you know them. So this is things that we typically would see in a GDP potentially as well.
We had in the last development, we had these.
Yeah. With Barnwood, they came to us with, or included in the packets or in documents, pictures of homes. Now, of course, that could be very speculative, but homes that would be in said development. And I assume you're planning on building a model home within both subdivisions?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, this is easy for us to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
That's it on,
So my recommendation would be, if you move forward, would be to include these 3 things and then these 3 things, so those kind of 6 additional pieces.
So you want to include these and bring them back?
It's up to this committee.
I think we probably want to see those, but.
Yeah.
So it's within your.
We can include this in the final packet with the HOA requirements and everything.
Assume we can do it at that time. I mean, so we're gonna.
My suggestion is also going to be that, as you make your recommendation, that there is another stage to this, which is the final plat process. And so we don't want to get too far ahead of that final plat process, but the applicant does need some clear direction that they actually have zoning approval. And that's what this process is doing, so they can continue to move forward with their plat process. So anything that would also be in here would be as a condition of approval. If you have some concerns about when to bring it back, you could also condition if the final plat wasn't ever approved, this goes away. But I don't believe that's within their
Dan, in the material we received, we obviously have the covenants. We had it twice for first subdivision up the hillside, and within that was very specific detail on the homes, the siding, the roofing materials, driveways, etc. Is that
It's duplicative of what's in the GDP as well as what you guys put it. You know, as I was going through it, it's a 1-to-1 in there.
Mhm.
My only comment then is if you don't want those pieces to be enforceable, they need to add a statement that this is only enforceable by the HOA and not by the town. And that's in my review letter.
Make sure that's put in.
Yeah.
okay?
All right, well, what do we want to do here with the GDP? You guys want to see what we talked about, or you want to approve it with these conditions being met, and then if the preliminary or the final plat goes away, this all ends? How's everybody want to do it?
Liability, efficiency. I want to do it the most efficient way possible.
How did you normally see this? I mean, this
Yeah,
is
how does this
subdivisions,
happen, Dan?
this is still a new process for
The
us.
fencing details are gonna be pretty standard. I
Right.
would say the lighting details are gonna be pretty standard, so they can include those pieces. The landscaping, screening, as long as they meet our town standards, that's a town standard. As long as they put in the tot lot pieces and they have a standard package, if you're comfortable moving that forward with what they say is a standard package, not seeing the individual pieces that would be included in it. And then the trail design, again, is if we continue to go with what this trail standard we've already set for Barnwood, all of these pieces are pretty much a stamp, I guess you would say. The only other one then is the example illustrations of buildings, and that would be the only other one that I would say would be slightly different than what would be a standard. So if you want to see example illustrations, it's in your opportunity to do so. But if you're comfortable with them including them, and then as they move forward with those covenants, to also include them in the covenants at the final plat stage, then you can make some modifications there as well.
Comfortable with the latter. I mean, where we're going and what you're setting out for us, we're stepping it up a notch. Obviously, like 20, 30 years ago, when we were developing subdivisions, these kinds of discussions were not happening, I think. And when I think of Thousand Oaks, for example, which is closest to me, I don't remember, I mean, obviously I wasn't on the board at the time.
Right. So, as far as housing, you're looking like what you have in Hardeman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we modeled those declarations.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Question, is it a thing now where you look at some of these subdivisions and the houses are all gray? Yeah, and is that
Blue
a
and
fad? I mean, or what? Because
Gray and
it's,
slate blue and light slate blue.
That's kind of the way it is over there, though.
oh,
We will not let our building partners spec gray because we know every customer wants that gray palette right now. And the designers, they come into the design studios, and not just at our sister companies, at all the companies.
yeah,
and
well,
they
that's what I'm
all are
asking, because it's just,
pounding on the table that they want that same color palette, and they want the white trim. And the gray, and so it's a negotiation with our designers to try to talk them out of it.
yeah.
We try our best.
So, I mean, like over at Hardeman, I mean, that was all picked by the homeowner or the developer. I mean, it just so happens that they're almost all the same color.
75% of that is customer.
Okay.
Customers build those houses, they go through the design studio and they pick the colors.
And if it's their house, it's their right to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Right, and
Yeah.
they say, your neighbor's house is this color too, like, yeah, but.
And that was a
That's
question
what I saw
from
in
driving
the
through there. That was a question I had because it just so happened like almost all of them were the same. There's a few in Sussex were like almost all the same.
Same.
You know, it's their property.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not just our subdivisions right now, I look at
Yeah.
everybody
No,
else's, and
it's
all
generally,
gray.
it's all
Yeah.
over.
No, well, actually,
And the
Joe.
kitchens are white cabinets with subway tile, like, it's just, that's
in
kind
our
of the
houses.
thing right now.
Joe, in Hardeman Estates, I was thinking the same thing, but if you notice, there are different color schemes on the homes, because obviously we're on Lake 5, we're seeing the homes that are going up now. And that subdivision, that's indicative of housing, that subdivision is filling up fast. And I'm seeing different color schemes in there. I don't know about the interiors, because it's not my property. But
We do our.
there is a variety of of what's
We
going
do
on.
have we asked our builder partners to spec different colors, you know, when
Yes.
we're building it without a.
I was just curious.
You're touching a nerve with me, because I'm in there with the designers all the time talking to them about this. Talking about this moment, actually.
Yeah.
I said, you need to know what it's like for me to sit in front of a plan commission when you guys send out houses that are all the same color.
Yeah. If,
But I mean, what's
Jane-
actually on the house and what's like, is there brick required? Is there this required?
Yeah,
Is there that?
and
I mean,
that's mentioned in the documents that were submitted.
Yeah.
And
That's more
not
than-
in defense of all that, or in defense of, beige or whatever. Right across one of the developments you're doing in Heartland and Northeast is obviously Bristlecone Pines. Talk about no outside variety. I mean, those homes are all obviously very expensive
Right.
setup, but the homes are all realistically the same color, and that's a step up. You're dealing with $800 million
And
plus.
even still do the same color.
Yes, with obviously wood shingle roofs.
I can see the newspaper headlines tomorrow. Lisbon Plan Commission hates colors of other subdivisions.
Kelly isn't here.
Oh, I'm good with the condition.
Is Kelly
You
watching?
go with condition approval?
Yeah.
Jane, where are you at with condition approval, or do you want to bring it back?
I think conditioned approval. I don't
Becky?
need to.
I'm with conditional approval. I don't want him to have to come back for that.
Brian?
What she said.
Jen, did we get your opinion? I skipped right over
I'm
you.
the same though.
All right.
Conditional.
Ed, did you decide conditioned, or did you?
Conditioned, yes.
All right. All right, any other comments?
The only other comment is, last time when we did the GDP, we actually had an ordinance in front of you. We found that when the town board is actually making the ordinance, it probably needs to start there, because we ended up having to come back a few times for that one. So the ordinance will be prepared by the town attorney, by myself. Now, based off of your comments, we'll craft the ordinance now so that we don't get the cart before the horse. And so we'll incorporate all your comments into that ordinance, and then that ordinance will get in front of the town board. So I just want to let you know, that's the reason why you didn't see a draft ordinance in your packet. You probably won't see them moving forward, because if we put a draft in there and you make a bunch of comments on it, we don't catch those comments in the ordinance that gets put forth to the from the draft that gets moved forward. We then have to bring it back. So we're trying to make sure we're development friendly, I guess you would say. We're not causing a hiccup because of how we did something. So that's the reason why that you didn't see a proposed ordinance in your packet tonight.
All right, anything else to discuss on this one? Make sure we beat this one right down.
We
Does anyone
did.
want to make a motion on this?
Is that, Mr. Chairman, D number 2?
Correct.
Okay.
Number 2.
I would move that action on a combined general development plan and specific development plan for the proposed Hillside Ridge subdivision and recommendation to the town board of the same be approved. Also, per town planner documentation and comments.
Is there a second?
And your
We get a second quick, and then, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, now go.
and your things that you elected to add to that plan.
And the CDP?
The
What?
I'm sorry,
these 6 items that you've added to this one. I would say. To the-
GDP.
GDP.
You've added.
Any items that were added and discussed here tonight?
And GDP does not stand for gross domestic product, obviously. So, yes.
You're okay adding those? Is the second okay?
Yes.
Okay. Jan, you got that?
Yep.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Yeah.
Item E, discussion and necessary action on the request for Newman Developments, Inc. for the property located along Lisbon Road in the town of Lisbon, tax scale SPT 0264.998.002, generally located north of Lisbon Road and south of Ainsworth Road, adjacent to Bassam Lane, for the following: discussion and possible action on a preliminary plat for the proposed preserve at Harvest Ridge subdivision and recommendation of the town board of the same, and discussion and possible action on a combined general development plan and specific development plan for the proposed preserve at Harvest Ridge subdivision and recommendation of the town board of the same. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Thank you. Halfway there. All right, on to the preliminary plat first. I put on the screen here the preliminary plat. As I mentioned before, it's a single page, so it's a little bit more detailed. So I did provide some additional blow-ups if we need to kind of zoom into those. I also did provide some additional of the civil drawings. I believe you had some of those in your packet as well. So I can kind of work through my comments here. I will lead with this, that Sandy did not have a review letter at this time. It had not made it to her desk yet, so they are going to be performing a review separately from this one. So I will lead with that comment. So,
Is that something that we delayed, they delayed, or just?
I don't know.
Okay.
On that one. So it may have just got routed wrong in their office, but she had not seen it yet until the packet was there. So she's currently doing her.
She had a lot more time than her set review.
Yeah.
She did on this one. I'm not sure she was sitting on it very long. She really, they got them within a few days or so like that.
Yeah. So she's doing their review now.
She's got.
Yep. So anyways, some of the comments are pretty similar. So they had two separate firms do this, but some of the comments were similar. Layout, side lot lines again. This one had a lot more that were not right angles to it. So just again, request waivers from those. And if you can get them to right angles, please try. There's some of them that were pretty close that could probably be turned into right angles. It was just how it was drafted by the surveyor. Try to meet that ordinance. They were very just off by a little bit. Lot lines, again, adjacent to the outlots, assumed to be reasonable to preserve that outlot. Vision corner easement required, so just make sure that is also included. And again, the berm section, make sure we comply with these. So you're gonna see some of the similar comments here as we move forward. From a technical standpoint, again, we did identify potentially one area that had a smaller than 100-foot tangent between curves, so just request that waiver, and that is coming off of Green Meadow. That is necessary to go with the curvature of the land, so again, that's the request, the waiver to be why. I would also say at that point, I didn't see a curve table in this one too, so again, add a curve table to this same one. And I'll also add a lot table. So those are going to be some additional comments. I would request that these come in at separate pages so that we can review them a little bit more in depth with the next response letter. This one also has cul-de-sacs that are over 500 feet. Due to previous discussions with the Plan Commission, the applicant has requested that waiver, so we just need that in their response letter, or a waiver is requested. Fire department did comment on those pieces, so they did expand their bulbs. But I also did want to make sure that we do address the fact that I believe road name E, which you have right now, is a court. That probably should not be a court. That should be a road because it is a potential future extension. So same as Green Meadow was a road, even though it did have a dead end, this probably also needs to be that same nature. So turn from a court to a road because it could.
You've given them names which will affect on the engineer. I'm pretty sure we named that road.
Okay, good.
But I'll check.
Just making sure on that one. And then Waukesha County Public Works to review and confirm the road dedication requirements. The previous CSM that we had done for that 5-acre piece, when I had contacted with them, they had required 50 feet, whereas this preliminary plat designates 60 feet. So just confirm with them what they're requiring at that time. So I just noticed those two are different. I did have some concerns, and I probably would ask the applicant, I'm sure you're probably not soil experts, and I don't claim to be a soil expert either, but I did notice some very differentiations in what were the test pits. Test pits are doing standing water, I don't say calculations, but observations, so that as you go forward to your stormwater, you can understand how that could percolate into the soil. But we also did notice that the seasonal high groundwater soil borings were much different, and so seasonal high groundwater observations are done based off the soil characteristics. We did see some very differences. We looked at the soil boring reports, and pretty much everything standing water was below 8 feet or so. Soil boring reports where seasonal high groundwater was most often within 2 to 3 feet of the surface. What that means is because we have an 18-inch separation distance from seasonal high groundwater, all of these are going to be pretty high above the surface, I guess you would say. So to confirm, review your soil reports, because when I looked at the reports.
Specific formatting is done.
Okay.
To confirm.
Okay. So you guys
Those
are.
have been submitted to the county.
Because when I went through CG, who'd you use in this one?
CGC.
CGC, and they're a really good firm, I would say, that does these soil boring reports. When I was reviewing through them, I had our engineer staff look at them too, and he had some questions on those. So review some of those questions that we had, and Waukesha County is probably going to comment on those pieces as well. Just want to make sure that we're not going to have structures, sitting 2 feet below the surface and going up from there. So just want to confirm on that one. And therefore, I would say include a summary table detailing those findings. So as part of your additional submittal, just you did have a sheet in your civil drawings that said where the basement floor elevation was gonna be. Those were pretty close to the elevation, so just review those again. We are gonna be limited to what the data tells us, so I don't know if that's truly something that needs to come back, because our code is our code. So whatever the reports are, I would say review those again with your CGC. Include a summary table. From grading and drainage, include that same note. I did include all side rear lot lines in my letter that said Waukesha County and the town of Lisbon. I would say remove Waukesha County on that one because they don't have jurisdiction, so just the town of Lisbon on that one. Include any drainage swales necessary to direct water from the rear of the lots. You did have that in your previous one, but your civil plans were missing a couple that I would say would be just drainage directions, and so I was just wondering where some of those would be. I would say update those in your civil plans. Provide, again, DNR wetland confirmation. You said that one was done by an assured delineator in this case, so we're okay there. Just state that on the plat that it wasn't assured delineator. Revise the wetland preservation restrictions to reflect what was attached to the packet. I think you've seen that now. And then this one also has a 75-foot setback from the wetlands, and I think that may impact two of the lots. I think their lot numbers 50. Confirm here. Two of the lot numbers
55.
4 and 55.
Okay.
It just may impact where your on-site storm or sewage facilities may be. So just all I need to do is have the 75-foot buffer on there so that we are aware that there is a building location in that 75 feet of that wetland. Address any comments to Waukesha County when they submit their final review. Address any comments from the Village of Merton, so we do have extraterritorial here in this case. Address any comments from the Department of Administration following those submittals. And then the applicant to address any trail ownership. In this case, we talked about last time, this one does have access to what would be a future trail between in Merton, as well as Waukesha County has off of the county highway as a future designated trail. So maybe we need to address, is that public or private again in this situation. My only other comments would be similar to what we had from a trail standpoint is we have public spaces designated, but no details to what those are. Are those tot lots, are those just common spaces? So we can address that either here or in the GDP, SDP. And then my other comments for additional, just kind of the overarching comments are similar to what we saw before. Include a summary table that shows all the things that were included in the packet, which is the curve table, the development acres, the lot table. Wisconsin Historic Preservation Database note, please include that one if there are nothing there. Include the locations of the adjacent subdivisions, park and cemeteries of owners of record of unplatted lands. In this case, we probably should see Jane's name on this plat actually, because she is an unplatted land owner. So anytime you run into that one, make sure that their name is on there. So Jane's name will actually be on the plat. And so that's where we are with all my comments, so I can be available for any of those questions. I would probably say start with Waukesha County's your other review letter, you're probably gonna have similar comments from Waukesha County and some of those things.
Okay.
But until you get your letter.
So, trails here, any thoughts about what you wanna do?
Well, public or private on this one? I'm assuming the same kind of set, 8 foot, 12 foot, I'm assuming.
Barnwood also connected to trail network?
Yeah, Barnwood, all the trails inside of that subdivision were public easement trails because of its connectivity to the town trail.
So the trail, and do you know who owns the trails in Barnwood?
The trails were owned by the association, maintained by the association, but had public access to them.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Same.
Yes. I'm good with that.
Okay.
This one
Consider that.
connects two streets, it makes more sense than the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you might have people crossing over from the subdivisions that are to the north, crossing Ainsworth to walk in the
The big vision on this side of town was to have everything interconnected and accessible. And if we didn't require that, I'm sure Merton would.
I think that's great.
So. Okay.
Council did submit, I believe, some comments in the packet for this one as well, and I believe they're still going through some additional stormwater reviews. Waukesha County did submit their review of stormwater in this piece as well. So they are, I would say, if you're going to make a recommendation, again, hinge it on all those additional reviews.
Dan, question. You mentioned in your report, very thorough, as usual, thank you. You were talking about high water tables, soils, etc. Am I going to guess that those would most impact lots 40 through 50 or 51? It would be in the north side of the proposed subdivision, closer to Ainsworth.
Due to soil modeling, it was, as I went through the reports, it's just based off of, it could be it's spotty through the entire area, and that's the way it is through the town. So you could hit 2 lots over, have a 9-foot before it hits seasonal high groundwater, 2 lots later be at 3, and that's just the way that the soil characteristics are in the town.
Understood. Because after the frost was out of the ground, I happened to be driving down Ainsworth at one point, and there, to the west of this Court C, there was a virtual lake. It was gone within a few weeks, as the water was absorbed into the groundwater table. So it's spotty throughout the entire development.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's why I requested they work through the soil surveyor to review those items here. As I mentioned, some of those elevations, if you looked at the soil reports, were pretty close to the surface, and 2 homes or 3 homes over, it was sizable difference. So I just want to confirm on those pieces.
Yeah, we'll have appropriate Form As submitted after the stormwater review. It's our understanding with some of the testing that actually when you get about 8 feet-ish, 6 to 8 feet below the current surface, you start to actually get some pretty good draining soil. So we have to improve the condition of the water drainage because it's not getting down there right now. Okay. That's all part of the stormwater seeping that is sent to lake.
What about this spring, or I forgot how you guys refer to it as a hill seepage or something, but did you guys figure out anything more on that up on the northeast?
No, except that we avoid that area. So the outlet and drain down towards the stormwater.
And again, making sure nothing on the Magellan's property, that the stormwater doesn't drain onto there no more than it already is.
Is that the home to the east on Ainsworth?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, there was quite a bit of water sitting in there back in late May, June.
So is there any, as far as, these are going to naturally drain in there now, correct?
The drainage should be improved. I don't have the details of the stormwater report in front of me, but the general notes is the drainage will improve and no more water flows will leave at the same rate and volume at which they currently
Okay.
If you look at the civil plans, you actually see the road has more rise and fall throughout the entire subdivision, and that's the reason why, versus on Hillside, you saw one large stormwater management area. This one has multiple smaller ones split up because of the changes in topography, sending water certain ways, and so each one is impacted a little bit differently, and that's the reason why you see, again, more than a single large one like you saw in the previous submittal.
The topography from almost going from east to west seems to be, Jane, correct me if I'm wrong, rather flat around Court E, Court D to the south, but the entire parcel drops in elevation as you go towards Ainsworth, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frankly, where the road is scheduled to go here, that's the low point of the whole darn property.
Is that Balsam Lane? Or Basham, I'm sorry?
Basham.
Not Balsam, Ed. Basham Lane.
That you're gonna have to raise that road up because that's usually underwater in the spring. They planted odd crops. Dorns had farmed, and they planted special crops and everything else in that whole area because they knew the water was there, and they worked with it.
Would and I saw that again in late May, would the settlement basin address that issue? That's just east of the entrance? Because, yeah, there was definitely,
It's
the
gonna be
water had
required
sat
to.
in there a long time. So, I would assume the settlement basin would be a correcting factor. Yeah.
Hope so.
Yeah, because with our soil conditions, obviously, if we have a wet winter and then we have a wet spring, we have problems. Because if it's clay soil, it can only absorb so much water. So,
Tot lots was another thing we gotta look at, correct?
Public
Okay.
open, or.
Public open
yeah,
space.
It wasn't top lot this situation, it was community amenity from our last discussion.
That you guys had was a community amenity, and it wasn't defined what that was, and so that could be done in the GDP. It's shown on here as around the pathways, but you may want to include a map of that in the actual GDP.
So it's just gonna be open space essentially?
We were gonna do some.
No, yeah, we, the south loop, off of Green Meadow Road, we did contemplate some sort of playground top lot type setup. And then the other one that would be an outlot, it's part of lot 4, but fire pit type gathering area.
so it would be lot 4.
What we do internally, honestly, we kind of sit with the sales staff and we sort of, as a group, sort of come up with amenity plans.
Sure.
We haven't done that yet. And it's-
Understood.
it's kind of this is good.
Yes.
Where is that water gonna come from?
But we were thinking tot lot, for sure, a fire pit, we like that, that seems to be good. We were to a pickleball or anything.
Yeah, and the HOA, again, monitors the fire pit, et
Yes,
cetera.
right,
Okay.
yeah.
Pickleball's really taken off.
It is, yeah.
My goodness.
We're doing it at all our empty stuff.
Okay. Any comments or questions on that? Anyone have any comments or questions on the rest of it? What else we gotta done? That's pretty much it.
That's it for that one. I would say just, my biggest thing is if I can get more clarification on the revised submittal before, if you do make a recommendation of approval, that when it comes back to town staff to review, it's broken up a little bit so we can see it a little bit cleaner. I actually had to print it oversized so I can actually read some of the notes and everything, so.
Mr. Chairman, I will be brief. On my horse, the only thought going down the road here, play on words. I know that the town or village of Merton is putting a subdivision on the other side of Amesworth. And Amesworth Road is an old country road. And so what I continually worry about, looking at what's happening with a nearby Lake 5 in Silver Spring, very dangerous intersection that's right next to your subdivision, is again, we're putting more traffic on these roads that were never designed to handle the cars we're putting on them. Can I do anything about that? No. But I just wanted, as a matter of record and concern.
Well, there's talk about improving the intersection on the west side of Ainsworth. I think there's been discussion with the county at this point.
There is?
Yeah.
Okay,
there's
I
been-
didn't know that.
Yeah, there's been discussion about the intersection. I mean, not the actual road, but the intersection of doing improvement, because that is a bad intersection. It's, yeah, you can't see very well. So the county's involved in that one. There'd been some positive interaction with that. There's actually some talk about, actually assessing some different fees with the lots. I guess I'm wondering where that went. You guys aware of that?
Well, logically, what's going to happen is most of the participants, I'm thinking, within this subdivision are going to go out to Lisbon Road, turn left, and obviously go down to 16 to go into, industrial parks in Pewaukee et al. That'll be the main, they'll go K, Ryan Road, bang. That'll be the main feeder. So.
We did submit this one. Prior to home.
Did you?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
and pretty warm response from builders. I think they'd like to be in here. So this becomes a trade zone.
And you're still going to stick with the plan of developing the south side of the of this proposed subdivision first, and then working north. Okay.
If at all possible, then on both of these subdivision plats, as you submit your response letter, a small inset map showing where the potential phase plan is going to be. That was a comment from Waukesha County, so.
Okay. Anything else? same question before, do we want to approve this contingent upon? And if we do, does anyone want to make a motion in favor?
Contingent upon,
All these conditions being met.
I will move that the preliminary plat, getting
See, I'm not the only one that does that.
I know. It's getting late. I would move that the preliminary plat, excuse me, for the proposed preserve at Harvest Ridge subdivision and recommendation to town board and Waukesha County of the same be approved per the information agreed upon with town planner and any notes taken.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I would also add Waukesha County approval, Village of Merton approval, Department of Administration approval, and Waukesha County should also include and define planning and land use, Department of Public Works, and environmental health. So,
Is the motion okay with that?
I am Dan.
And town engineer.
Motion okay
Town
with that too?
engineer. Dan, did you get that?
Second
Excellent.
okay with that?
Second is okay.
Yes.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
And I'm recusing on it.
6-0. Motion carries 6-0.
Just for the record, I'm working with Tom Nelson at Merton to get a meeting scheduled, so should have that within a couple weeks probably.
And those corrections were prior, for clarification, were prior to town board approval, right?
That's what the motion was intent?
Yes.
Second was intent, and the board was under that understanding? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, Dan. That would be our understanding.
All right. And discussion, possible action on combined general development plan and specific development plan for the proposed preserve at Harvest Ridge subdivision and recommendation to the town board of the same.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would say this one is almost a mirror of the last one because the applicants had prepared their GDPs together. So if you are comfortable with my same comments from before, they pretty much all stand here at the same time. So the criteria is all going to be the same. You have the ability to go through that. So as long as you make your motion to state that it meets the requirements that were included in the application packet in our letter, and then you would look at these following items that were submitted: preliminary plat, soil characteristics, grading plan, stormwater management plan, design criteria. Those all being approved as supplementals to this GDP. And then the other things that were talked about before, which were example illustrations for homes, fencing details, required lighting details, landscaping, screening, burn requirements, description of the open space, and then trail design standards. Those again are all my same.
Does anybody have any questions, comments? I mean, it's pretty much the same as the last one. Does anyone wish to make a motion on this one?
I will. Move the action on a combined general development plan and specific development plan for proposed preserve at Harvest Ridge subdivision and recommendation to town board of the same with precise detail to town planner's recommendations. Now, does that fulfill that requirement without going back to the slides?
I guess. I would say those are the additional.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Becky.
Thanks, Becky.
You're welcome.
And I wish to be recused.
Okay. We covered with that?
We okay, Dan?
Yeah.
All right.
We'll then craft the ordinance if you elect to vote in favor of this, and that ordinance, similar to the last one, will include the findings of these 9 findings, design criteria pieces included in that ordinance.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0 with Jane abstaining. Thank you.
Anything else you guys want to say?
So that prairie grass you were talking about earlier.
Item 7, town clerk and planner. Review planner appointments from July and August.
Stop. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I wasn't at the last meeting, so this is a July and August, so I appreciate Dan and other town staff and other staff filling in for me. But over the past 2 months, I would say we've had a couple phone calls, but our actual stop-ins for planners appointments. We had a landscaping, cold business storage. We had what you actually saw already, was the land crafters grading plan that came in last month. I believe you guys saw that. We had a North Lisbon Road rezoning, which has become a no-go situation. In that case, they were just the potential applicant, Brownsburg, was looking at planning for their future of their father's land, and they ultimately have decided to just kind of hold off on that one. We had the lot combination CSM, which you saw tonight. We have the proposed building addition, site plan of operation in the industrial, or in the business center. We actually had 2 of those, so you guys may actually be seeing another one coming just down the road from what you saw tonight to move forward. And then Hanover Hill subdivision entry sign actually came in today, actually. So we met with them a couple weeks ago. They want to. You guys approved a few years ago a stone sign for Hanover Heights subdivision. They previously had 2 wooden signs. Both wooden signs got cut down. They were replaced with 1 stone sign. They're looking to actually bookend the other stone sign on their easement at this time. So similar situation. So they're going through that process right now. So we'll be discussing that. Another one that will be coming in, and we do have the sign application. We didn't meet about it, but it's Gordy's sign. That one is a little bit more complex, and I'm going to talk on this one in a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Gordy's came in for its site plan approval before my time here, and so I'm kind of going back through the records. That is zoned M2. The town, according to our zoning code, said we would apply the business park standards to that district voluntarily. We've had that mapped. I think we inadvertently at that time sent it to Sussex and actually sent them through the Sussex ringer for actual their design approval when it should have only been recommendation. So we in essence gave Sussex more authority than what they probably had. And I talked to Waukesha County about that, and I think we're kind of in agreement, so I'm kind of doing a summary on that one. My opinion is we still need to comply with the sign requirements for Gordy's, but it needs to stay internal and advisory at Sussex and not approval authority at Sussex. The way the ordinance reads is BP district and B4 district are approval authority for Sussex. Again, it's zoned M2, and we would have voluntarily apply those design standards, but it must stay approval authority here. So I will say that it's probably going to have to go back to Sussex, and it'll be a recommendation on that sign, but not an approval. And that's probably going to be a sticking point when we get to that meeting. But I did want to make the Plan Commission aware. I did kind of find that when I was doing my review of some of these items. So that's the only other one.
Quick Trip.
Oh, that one, I suppose, was not an in-person visit, but was a phone call on that one. Quick Trips over off Lake 5 has submitted some preliminary concepts to us for us to review before a full application has come in for a complete store rebuild. So we haven't seen that one come in from an application standpoint at this time. How they see that staging is, first of all, I would like to say no car wash. No car wash. But it would be they purchased 2 other properties adjacent to them, those 2 vacant lots. They purchased those. They would build on those 2 lots to a point to where they could almost open up the store. The store would only be down for about a week, and they would demolish the other store in that time frame and build the other supplemental pieces around it. It's a little bit more of a staging nature, but that's their intention, to submit a site plan of operation in that business district for that use. So.
And just a few other updates. Mr. Knabel on, I can't think of what road that was, the speed limit road, but near the park, in your subdivision. You know.
Oakwood Road.
Oakwood, thank you.
Yeah.
He submitted an application for a major grading permit. He wants to build a retention or some type of pond in his backyard. That's going to be more on Kunkel's review than probably as much Dan on the major grading. And then a couple of updates. Mr. Maluka also submitted his application today. I think we got about 4 applications today.
I got a bunch of Dropbox notifications today. So. Yep. You had a question on Quick Trip?
Is the county going to suggest, or is the county going to get proactive with that intersection if and when Quick Trip obviously builds a bigger station?
We haven't had that discussion to this point yet, so I can't answer that question.
Okay.
They are not accessing off of a county. I suppose they would be off of the south. So.
Yeah, because it
Off
would
the
take
south
them,
yet.
it would take them, Dan, closer to that intersection, which is becoming increasingly dangerous.
Their driveways aren't changing, so the driveways are staying the exact same as it is now.
Okay.
So the driveways are just being reconstructed in location. The building itself is just moving, I guess you could say.
Yeah, but
Okay.
then the driveways, that's gonna be crazy.
Well, in essence, the way that it looks, if you were to look at it walking into the store, the building, the pumps are offset versus the store kind of facing the street, or the, you know, we haven't seen elevations yet, but right now the way it looks, you from the north you have pumps, and then you have the building from when it was
Yes.
from when it was PDQ.
Right.
Pumps would be to the west, building would be to the east, as they've proposed so far, we've seen, so you're looking at a different orientation on there because they picked up 2 additional lots.
Okay.
Those lots would have to be combined because the building and the sites are on top of the property lines.
So they're going to remove all the existing canopy and the
Yes,
pumps and
they're
the tanks,
complete,
etc.
starting over.
Okay, just wipe it out.
Yeah,
Okay.
starting over certain. But they, like, as I mentioned, they describe their phasing as they do for all of their proposals when they do new builds. They pretty much have about a week turnover time frame from when the old one gets torn down to when the new one opens.
Yeah.
They'll do it too.
Yeah, they're incredible that way. I would just, again, I don't know what kind of power we have on this, but just the express of that intersection is dangerous and it's becoming worse. I don't know what Quick Trip, it's the county
Right.
needs to act on. And it should be painted.
What color?
Anything
Gray.
No, the only other thought that's not a town planner, town clerk appointment is my staff has been working through impact fee assessment as well as sign code. And I'm going to be meeting with Dan and Gina next week to go through those at a preliminary basis. But what I will, now I just jotted notes down here as we start to do our impact analysis. One thing I did not include in our park fee impact was the implications or the potential for pickleball in any community park. So I will put a disclaimer on that one that says it's not included, but if necessary, we can revise. But the impact fees, I do want to touch a little bit on because it is a bit of an interesting situation. When we do an impact fee study, we have 2 ways. We have a couple of different ways to do it. Typically, it's done off of national standards. You exceed national standards in your amount of parks that you have in most cases. So from that standpoint, so we don't eat into our surplus of our parks, we are doing this analysis based off of maintaining an existing level of service and moving forward. So I do want to make sure that we are discussing that point moving forward. That is a little bit different from how your previous one was done, but that's because you, again, are exceeding your national park standards. So we're moving forward with a current level of service.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Anything else from staff? Kevin, you want to chime in on anything?
I have nothing here.
Okay. Item 8, request from members of items to be put on future agendas. Item 9, adjournment.
So move.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're out at 9:38.